Chapter 28-36. After flying for a full hour, Fairy Hongxia came to a stop in front of a huge crater that was at least 100 li away. This is the ancestral hall of your Kai family? Where is it? Xiao Hua was very surprised. When he saw the location of this depression with his divine sense, Xiao Hua felt that there was something strange. Not only did he release his divine sense, but he also released his Buddhist sense and scanned the entire depression. Not only did he not find any fluctuations of magic power, but he also did not find anything strange. Of course it's here. Fairy Hongxia smiled sweetly. This used to be a huge lake, but now the lake water is gone. Then, can you still find the ancestral hall of the Kai family? Xiao Mao and Li Zongbao caught up and asked worriedly. Hee, we're already at the doorstep. Of course, I have my ways. Fairy Hongxia said proudly to Xiao Hua, is there anything out of the ordinary around here? No. Xiao Hua shook his head, there's really no one around. That's good. Fairy Hongxia said with a smile, Xiao Lang, please retreat a little. Watch me open the doors of the ancestral hall. All right. Xiao Hua and the rest retreated a few feet. Unexpectedly, Fairy Hongxia shook her head and said, you still have to retreat. Xiao Hua was a little flabbergasted. He retreated more than 100 feet before stopping. Just as Xiao Hua and the rest stopped, they heard a crisp sound in front of them. A crystal-clear phoenix celestial body with a faint sapphire blue radiance was released from Fairy Hongxia's body. The moment the celestial body appeared in mid-air, it immediately spread its wings. Rings of light shone from its wings, like the colorful feathers of a phoenix. What was special was that when the sun shone on the celestial body, a rainbow of colors shot out from the celestial body, making it look extremely beautiful. Xiao Hua had naturally seen Fairy Hongxia reconstruct her phoenix celestial body in the cave. He only felt that it was weird, but did not pay much attention to it. Now that he saw it again under the light of day, he could not help but gasp. Putting aside the power of this phoenix celestial body, just the beauty of this beautiful mobile was definitely worthy of Fairy Hongxia's beauty. The phoenix Dharma body slightly spread its wings, and a round of light flashed by like a flying shadow. An indescribable illusion immediately appeared in Xiao Hua's eyes, as if the phoenix Dharma body had rushed into his eyes. Not only is Senior Martial Sister's Ice Phoenix celestial body much more beautiful, but it's also a little smaller. Xiao Mao was also intoxicated, and only after a while did he speak in a low voice. Not bad. Xiao Hua also noticed that when the Ice Phoenix was reforged, it was still the same as before. But now, the Ice Phoenix had actually shrunk, and it was only 30 meters in size. He didn't know why. Just as Xiao Hua and the rest were watching, Fairy Hongxia's figure followed the Ice Phoenix celestial body and rushed into the deep depression. About 20 meters away from where she was previously standing, Fairy Hongxia rushed straight up into the sky again. Fairy Hongxia paused for a moment, opened her mouth, and spat out a mouthful of essence blood. Her hands had already formed a seal, and she struck it. There were only a few seals, and they looked very simple. Under the seal, the essence blood spun a few times, and actually turned into an inch-long short arrow. Go, Fairy Hongxia lightly reprimanded. She pointed with both hands, and the blood-red short arrow rushed down from the sky, straight towards Fairy Hongxia's body, and shot towards the edge of the depression. With a soft "pa" sound, the short arrow landed on a flat, slanted wall. The moment the short arrow touched the slanted wall, it immediately sank in, and even left a soybean-sized hole in the slanted wall. Just a moment later, an extremely strange sound came from the slanted wall. It was like the cry of a phoenix, but also like the roar of a dragon. Moreover, this sound seemed to be compressed, and was extremely sharp. Along with this sound, an earth-shattering impact came from the soybean-sized hole, directly and horizontally pressing in all directions. Although Xiao Hua and the rest were dozens of meters away, they could still feel the surging force. Since Xiao Hua and the rest could feel it, Fairy Hongxia, who was close at hand, would naturally bear the brunt of it. In fact, a spiral-like shockwave engulfed Fairy Hongxia's entire body along with the impact. The Ice Phoenix celestial body let out a long cry, flapping its wings, and welcomed this inexplicable wave. The wave's penetrative power was extremely strong, and in an instant, it passed through Fairy Hongxia's physical body and celestial body. Fairy Hongxia's protective magic treasure did not have any effect at all. The wave was like a huge wave, and after passing through Fairy Hongxia, it immediately converged, and the entire thing disappeared into the small hole. Moreover, after the impact, there was no echo, and the entire hole was the same as before, without any changes. Looking at Fairy Hongxia again, she could not hide the joy on her face. She kept her Ice Phoenix celestial body, retreated, and stood in mid-air outside the hole. Turning her head, she said to Xiao Hua and the rest, Xiao Lang, senior brother, Xiao Mao, follow me into the ancestral hall. Hearing Fairy Hongxia's call, Xiao Hua and the rest hurriedly flew over. However, before they could get close to Fairy Hongxia, they heard a series of violent crackling sounds, like thunder, below Fairy Hongxia's body, which was the place where the blood arrow had flown in, and then another wave of multicolored light shot up into the sky. Fairy Hongxia was clearly caught off guard, and her entire body was swept aside by the multicolored light, flying more than 10 meters away. Woo 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 woo, as if a bugle horn had been blown, an object that looked like a scroll was revealed from the light. The light flowed rapidly on the scroll, and as the sound of the bugle horn rang, it slowly unfurled itself. The scroll was laid flat in the deep hole, and as the scroll unfolded, a beautiful scene appeared in the light. There were mountains, rivers, birds, fish, and even a few empty boats floating on the surface of the water. Rumble, when the scroll was unfurled by dozens of feet, the mountain peak that was originally flat on the scroll seemed to be pulled by a large hand. It created a loud noise and slowly rushed out from the scroll. The mountain range around the mountain peak was also continuously formed and gradually meandered. The ripples on the surface of the water also surged out, and within the ripples, multicolored fish jumped out from the water from time to time. Chirp chirp chirp, a few crisp chirps of birds rang out, and on the big tree that had just straightened up, emerald green birds flew between the soft branches again. Even Fairy Hongxia couldn't help but open her mouth, and stared blankly at the scene before her. She watched as the scroll gradually filled up the hundreds of miles deep hole, and the previously dry hole had turned into a beautiful land of fish and rice in just a few moments. Quick, Xiao Hua, who was next to him, was stunned for a moment. When he saw the first open scroll begin to turn again, as if it was going to roll everything in, he hurriedly shouted, "Are we going to find the entrance to the ancestral temple in here?" Yes, I understand." Fairy Hongxia also came to her senses, and quickly pointed at the newly formed island on the surface of the water, and said, "The entrance is on the island. Previously, I thought it was in this deep hole." As she spoke, Fairy Hongxia took the lead and flew out, rushing towards the island. The millions of Meng mountains that were still in a drought just a moment ago had now arrived at a place filled with water. The air was filled with dense water vapor, and even Xiao Hua had the urge to jump into the water to play. However, right behind them, the scroll had already been rolled up, and its speed was much faster than when it was unfolded. The sound of the bugle horn was getting more urgent, as if it was urging everyone to quickly fly to the island. Not good. I can't use my divine sense. Xiao Hua, who had been using his divine sense to keep a lookout, suddenly felt a strong wave coming from the scroll, covering everything within 100 miles. His divine sense was immediately confined within his body, and could no longer be released. Quick, Fairy Hongxia was also a little anxious. It's not easy to open the ancestral shrine's door once. Although the jade didn't mention the interval between the second opening, but it definitely won't let us open it a second time so easily. As she spoke, Fairy Hongxia once again activated her flying technique, wanting to increase her speed. "Let me do it." Xiao Hua pulled Fairy Hongxia's hand, and whispered, "Don't use your magic." Okay, Fairy Hongxia knew that Xiao Hua's lightning evasion was very fast, so she obediently passed her hand to Xiao Hua, and retracted her magic. Rumble, a burst of lightning flashed around Xiao Hua's body, but just as Xiao Hua was about to activate the lightning evasion technique, Li Zongbao shouted from afar, "Junior brother Xiao, you can't use the lightning evasion technique." Oh. Xiao Hua was slightly taken aback as he hastily turned his head around. Sure enough, right behind him, due to the appearance of the lightning, hundreds of cracks had actually appeared on the bright and beautiful scenery. Furthermore, the cracks were growing larger and larger, as if the entire scenery was about to be torn apart. Darling Xiao, Fairy Hongxia also hurriedly shouted, "Let this concubine fly over by herself." "Huh, no need, watch this Xiao." Xiao Hua saw that the lightning evasion was too overbearing, and the scroll was actually unable to withstand it. He immediately activated his wind evasion, and like a breeze, he blew towards the island. The island looked very close, but when he really flew, he realized that it was extremely far away. Xiao Hua flew for half the time of a meal before he reached it. "Husband, let's split up and look for it. It's a phoenix totem." Fairy Hongxia clearly did not expect that her spiritual will could not be used, and was a little flustered. The moment she landed on the island, she did not have the time to look carefully, and immediately said to Xiao Hua, while she herself flew towards a direction. Okay, Xiao Hua was clearly not satisfied with Fairy Hongxia's preparations, but he could not say anything. He casually agreed, and was about to fly away, but when he saw Li Zongbao and Xiao Mao in the distance, he sighed, "These two, sigh, I should still use the flowing cloud flying ship." "Forget it, let's search first, and wait for the two of them to arrive." Chapter 28-37. After the time it takes to eat a meal, Li Zongbao and Xiao Mao finally arrived. Just behind them, the clouds in the sky changed dramatically, and all the scenery was engulfed in it. It was like a giant mouth that wanted to swallow everything. "Quick, senior brother, quickly find a phoenix totem. That's the entrance to the Kai family's ancestral shrine." Xiao Hua had already searched nearby, but he didn't find any traces, so he flew over and urged. "Okay." Li Zongbao and Xiao Mao both agreed, and hurriedly flew in two different directions. While Li Zongbao was flying, he occasionally looked back, and when he saw the sky full of celestial phenomena, he was slightly stunned and whispered, This seems to be a kind of array." Xiao Hua was right next to him, and he hurriedly replied, "Senior brotherly, what time is it? Quickly find the entrance." "If you can't find the entrance." Speaking up to here, Xiao Hua was stunned again, and a kind of fear appeared on his face. He shouted, "Damn it, it can't be. If we can't find the entrance, we will. Quick." Even Li Zongbao had an epiphany, and he hurriedly said, "Definitely. This Kai family's ancestral shrine is so important, how can it be easy to enter? If you don't have absolute confidence, and don't have the ability to enter the ancestral shrine, this ancestral shrine, I'm afraid it's a dead end. Damn Qin Yang Kai family." Xiao Hua cursed, "No wonder they didn't care when my wife took the jade pendant that leads to the ancestral shrine, so that's why." Li Zongbao also hurriedly flew away, and he didn't know if he noticed, but Xiao Hua actually called Fairy Hongxia, wife, in front of him for the first time. When he first saw the island, when it was time to find it, he felt that it was extremely difficult. How could a small phoenix totem be easy to find? Xiao Hua, who had no sense of direction, searched for a long time, but he didn't have the slightest clue. At this time, the sky above the island was filled with countless remnant clouds, and endless darkness. The previous scenery of the lake and mountains had now turned into wreckage floating in the air. Obviously, Scroll had reached the island, and her life was at stake. What should I do? What should I do? Xiao Hua frowned. This young master is known as the person with the best luck in the Dawn Rain continent. How can I not have a way? Holy shit, discerning eyes. Xiao Hua suddenly slapped his forehead as he came to a realization. Xiao Hua didn't know what happened to his Dharma eye after the last lightning tribulation, but it gradually became blurry. Xiao Hua had already forgotten about it. Xiao Hua didn't dare to be careless. He hurriedly opened his left hand and opened his Dharma eye. Sure enough, everything in the Dharma eye was blurry, as if it was covered by a thin veil, making it difficult to see clearly. However, although it was indistinct, he could still see through the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. A small, slender, and long brilliance appeared extremely far away. Senior Marshal Brotherly Xiao Mao, Xiao Hua didn't dare to be negligent and hastily flew towards the location of the brilliance while shouting loudly. Big brother, Xiao Mao was the first to come over after hearing the sound. Xiao Hua hurriedly said, quickly go and find your senior sister, the totem is just ahead. Yes, Xiao Mao trusted Xiao Hua the most. He didn't even ask how Xiao Hua knew that she was in front. He quickly flew into the sky to look for Red Dawn Fairy. When Xiao Hua arrived, he discovered that this was a low-lying area. That one zhang tall phoenix totem was actually stuck in the depths. If Xiao Hua didn't see it, how could he find this place? Seeing the totem, Xiao Hua let out a long sigh of relief. He opened his Dharma eye and looked down again. It was an extremely small, thumb-sized brilliance that went straight down. This. How do I go in? Xiao Hua was a little confused. Not long later, Red Dawn Fairy indeed followed Xiao Mao and flew over. Li Zongbao also rushed over. Xiao Hua, it's all thanks to you. Seeing that the phoenix totem was so hard to find, Red Dawn Fairy couldn't help but rejoice that she brought Xiao Hua over. Sigh, you. Why didn't you consider this situation earlier? Xiao Hua couldn't help but grumble. Red Dawn Fairy said apologetically, Xiao Hua, wait a moment, I'll explain slowly. As she spoke, Red Dawn Fairy put her fair index finger in her mouth and bit it. A smear of blood flowed out from the tip of her finger. Red Dawn Fairy squatted down and smeared the blood on the eyes of the phoenix totem. Buzz buzz, when the blood from her finger landed on the eyes of the phoenix, it immediately emitted a blood-red glow. The eyes actually moved slightly, and the blood-red glow began to spread towards the totem. Phew, Red Dawn Fairy let out a sigh of relief. She looked up and saw that the wave-like dark clouds were not far away from them. She then said, Xiao Hua, I've prepared a lot before coming here, but the ancestral shrine of the Kai family is very mysterious. This totem, and the scroll just now were not recorded in the jade amulet. It might have been passed down orally by the patriarch. I'm not a direct descendant of the Kai family of Qin Yang, so I can't know about this secret. Also, Million Mountain Meng, I've deliberately investigated it in the Sky Patrol City, but who would have thought? Million Mountain Meng actually looks like this. It's completely different from what I've imagined. Big brother, Xiao Mao laughed, I seem to have been born here. I don't even know what Million Mountain Meng looks like, let alone senior sister. Besides, if the Sky Patrol City can spy on Million Mountain Meng, doesn't that mean that everyone knows about the war between the soul cultivators and the sword cultivators? Xiao Mao then said, by the way, I wonder if Miss Jiu Xia has delivered the communication talisman. The sword Dao war should be ending soon, right? How can it be so fast? Xiao Hua shook his head and said, I think it'll take a while more. If the nascent soul masters receive the news and know about the sword cultivators' intentions, I'm afraid the war will really end. Our Dao sect will be able to recoup the losses of the first stage. I hope that's the case. Li Zongbao did not seem optimistic. Why? Xiao Hua was about to ask this question. Suddenly, a rumbling sound that sounded like the collapse of a mountain was heard from above their heads. Countless hurricanes swept across the sky like a mountain pressing down on them. Hurry, hurry. The four of them could not help but shout in their hearts. When they looked at the totem again, it was already filled with blood threads and gradually began to spin. Clang, the sound of metal clanging resounded through the entire area. A clear light soared into the sky. That light spun rapidly, creating an extremely strong suction force. Xiao Hua and the others couldn't resist, and were sucked into it. Even the hurricane that was already pressing down on everyone's heads was pulled in. When the hurricanes fell into the brilliance suddenly retracted. When the brilliance fell into the depression, the phoenix totem that was previously revealed had already disappeared. Moreover, the entire island was torn into pieces by the hurricanes. No trace of it could be seen anymore. Then, when he looked at the 100 miles deep depression in Mount Meng, as the scroll was rolled up, all the sceneries disappeared, and the place returned to its original barren state. It seemed that no one would know that the four cultivators of the Dao sect had been here. No one would know that there was actually a fallen ancestral temple of a cultivator clan in Million Mountain Meng. Even if Yi Yu was thousands of miles away, he would not know that the Xiao Mao that he had been thinking about was actually not far away from him. Yi Yu was different from before. The black clothes he was wearing were not sword armor. They were actually similar to what Xiao Mao was wearing now. The only difference was that there were fewer tassels on the black clothes and the patterns were different as well. Of course, Yi Yu was not flying on his sword. Instead, he was riding on a huge spirit beast. This spirit beast had a wingspan of over 200 feet. Its head was a few feet in size and looked extremely ferocious. From its wide mouth, drops of beast saliva that were larger than a fist dripped down from its sharp teeth, emitting an unpleasant stench. Lu, Yi Yu stood firmly on the head of the spirit beast. He crossed his arms in front of his chest and asked in a low voice, "That guy's actions, are they really so difficult to find out?" Beside Yi Yu were the disciples who had flown into Million Mountain Meng with him. These disciples had also changed their attire. One of the disciples who was closer to Yi Yu smiled bitterly when he heard Yi Yu's question. "Master, this lowly one seems to have told you a few times, right?" Night Rain's tone was cold. That disciple's face was filled with fear, and he hurriedly said with a smile, "All right, Sect Master knows." After I received Sect Master's orders, I quietly approached Xiao. You should know that these cultivators of the Dao sect have powerful divine abilities. This lowly one is far from being a match for them. This lowly one did not dare to get too close and could only follow from afar. So far, this lowly one did not even know how far away he was. Furthermore, this lowly one did not really understand the language of Meng Mountains. It was only later, when Ah-san brought a native from Kenji village, that this lowly one was able to find out more about that person's actions. When Ah-lu said this, he carefully looked at Yi Yu's face. When he saw that Yi Yu did not show any reaction, he had no choice but to continue. However, he had already said this many times, so he was not afraid of making a mistake. He looked at the flapping wings of the spirit beast under his feet and said smoothly, "That person seemed to have not gone straight to Shebi village after entering Meng Mountains. He did not even go to Shang village. Instead, he quietly headed toward a small village called Bai En village. Furthermore, the strange thing was, that person's information disappeared from Bai En village. It was as if he had never been there. Naturally, this lowly one did not dare to go to Bai En village myself. I could only ask that native to help me find out." At this point, Ah-lu rolled his eyes and asked tentatively, "Master, perhaps that person has already gone back?" This lowly one heard from that native that a few days ago, Bai En village was attacked by beetles near Bai En village. On top of that, there was also the sound of heavenly thunder that rushed out of Meng Mountains. Could it be that that person saw how terrifying Meng Mountains were and how they could not deal with the beetles that blotted out the sky and covered the earth, so they went back with their tails between their legs? How is that possible? Yi Yu turned his head and said coldly, "Why did that person come to Meng Mountains? Do you think he came here with me like you? What kind of bullshit relationship do that terrifying phoenix, Li Zongbao, Kai Hongxia, and the others have with Meng Mountains? If that person did not know about his origin and the secret of this place, would he travel thousands of miles to Meng Mountains? You must know, the journey from Sky Patrol City to Meng Mountains is extremely arduous. If he did not know that everything here is under his control, would he be willing to take the risk? Please forgive me if there are any mistakes." Chapter 28:38. My lord, Ah-lu showed a flattering expression and said with a smile, "You've already taken control of Shibai village. Even if that person returns to Meng Mountains and Shibai village, what can he do? Don't you just need to say a few words for everything? How can you be afraid of him? What do you know?" Yi Yu sneered, "This is Meng Mountains, not the sword domain. Strength doesn't determine everything. It wasn't easy for me to build such a good foundation here. How can I let that little kid ruin everything? Do you know that all mistakes start from a trace of carelessness? Then, Yi Yu shifted his gaze from the distance and looked at Ah Lu with a smile in his eyes, asking, "What else? What else?" Ah Lu was startled and quickly said with a smile, "My lord, I've already told you so many times. What's there to hide? You won't suspect that I am that person." "Hee hee, of course I won't suspect you." Yi Yu laughed, but then said with a deeper meaning, "However, the situation now is different from before. What I need is someone who can do things honestly. Ah Lu, you've followed me for so long. You should know my temper. I've already given you several chances, but you don't seem to have grasped them even once." My lord, Ah Lu's expression changed greatly. He was so scared that he quickly knelt down on the soul beast and wanted to argue. "Ah Chi, tell him where that person is." Yi Yu didn't even look at Ah Lu and said to the disciple who had been standing there silently and looking into the distance. "Yes." Hearing Yi Yu's order, Chi hurriedly bowed and said, "This lowly one has received orders from my lord to split up with Ah Lu. This lowly one knows that this matter is very important to my lord, so I didn't dare to neglect it. I personally made a trip to the Jing Apple village. First, I invited a native that this lowly one knew to go to the Bai and stronghold to inquire. In addition, this lowly one was afraid that this native wouldn't be able to obtain any useful information, so I spent some effort to invite a somewhat famous soul warrior in the Jing Apple village." At this point, Ah Chi hesitated and glanced at Ah Lu. "Continue." Yi Yu ordered indifferently. "Yes." Ah Chi clenched his teeth and said, "I didn't get any useful information from that aborigine. It seems that those aborigines are very supportive of that person, and they all kept their mouths shut, as if that person disappeared before he even reached Bai and village. But, from the mouth of that soul warrior, this humble one learned a completely different piece of information." See, when Ah Lu heard this, he fell to his knees with a plop. His forehead was covered with sweat as he cried out, "My lord, this lowly one was negligent. This lowly one made a mistake. Please punish me, my lord." Lil 7 glanced at Lil 6, and a trace of mockery flashed across his eyes. He said again, "After hearing this news, I really understand why the Lord values this matter so much, and also why the Lord wants to send me to the Bai and stronghold. If the Lord doesn't know about this, I'm afraid the Lord will be abnormally passive." Then, Chi roughly explained the situation of Xiao Mao and the others in Bai and village. Other than the incident in Su Garden, most of the information was the same. Finally, Ah Chi said, "The 5 people who entered Meng Mountains seemed to have a conflict. That extremely beautiful woman flew out of Meng Mountains, and the terrifying phoenix actually used the lightning escape technique to chase after her. My lord, you are really wise. That woman's cultivation seems to be far superior to the terrifying phoenix. If they fought at Drifting Cloud Lake, we would definitely die. When the terrifying phoenix returned, that woman didn't appear again. Clearly, she had left Meng Mountains. That person also left not long after, but that soul warrior didn't know where they went. Because when that person left, other than Elder Wu and G-Man, no one else knew. The other soul warriors only guessed because they couldn't see that person. Of course, this humble one also asked that soul warrior to make some more inquiries when he returned to Jing Apple village. After all, that is the only way to Shibai and village. But from the information brought by the soul beast a few days ago, they didn't pass by Jing Apple village. My lord, please punish this humble one for not being able to find out more specific movements." Ah Lu, Yi Yu smiled and said, "Did you hear that? What do you think is the difference between what you found out and what Ah Chi found out?" Ah Lu's sweat fell like rain. He was very clear in his heart that he had really made a mistake this time. Night Rain had placed too much importance on this matter. She actually sent Ah Chi to investigate after him. She was afraid that she would reveal that person's whereabouts. And he had been too careless, only sending a native to investigate and ended the matter carelessly. Of course, from his point of view, it wasn't considered carelessness. It was just that he hadn't thought it through. My lord, it's all my fault. Ah Lu didn't dare to argue and hurriedly said, "It's all my fault. However, if this humble one was in Chi's place, this humble one would definitely be able to do better. You're right. Yi Yu said lightly, if it was any other time, this lord wouldn't punish you like this. But, it's different today. You've seen it yourself. That man has won the hearts of the natives. And, to tell you the truth, that man is the descendant of the great god Shibai. His bloodline is extremely pure, and he is my enemy. Once the news of his arrival in Meng Mountains is spread out, all the natives of Shibai village will have to bow their heads and listen to his orders. So, the ones we can use are only a few soul warriors. Remember, only those soul warriors who have cultivated some soul spells will have different thoughts from the natives. We can only use this. This is a moment of life and death for this lord. This lord won't allow any mistakes. Yes, everyone's heart trembled as they answered in unison. As for Ah Lu, Yi Yu said lightly, along the way, why would this lord ask you so many times for no reason? This lord has given you so many chances. My lord, my lord. Ah Lu suddenly felt that something was wrong, so he quickly knelt down and begged. Too bad, you're always slacking off, and you're still like this today. Yi Yu's face suddenly turned ferocious. If it wasn't for Chi's probing today, this lord would still be in the dark, right? My lord. Ah Lu shouted, my lord, please, puff. A pale golden sword beam came out of Yi Yu's mouth and pierced into Ah Lu's forehead. Ah Lu didn't have any chance to resist or dodge. Yi Yu put away the small sword and kicked Ah Lu's corpse off the soul beast. Then, he glanced at the others and snorted coldly, all of you have lived peacefully outside of Meng Mountains for nearly 10 years. Now, this is a moment of life and death. If this lord succeeds, then I'll settle down in Meng Mountains. But if this lord fails, all of you won't be able to live either. All of you will have to rack your brains and follow this lord to kill that man. Otherwise, all of you will end up like Ah Lu. Yes, everyone bowed their heads and replied. As for Yi Yu, he raised his head and looked in the direction outside of Meng Mountains. Then, he viciously said, Third uncle, oh third uncle. Back then, you made it very clear that bastards everything was taken care of by you. That's why this lord was tricked into coming here. But now, that little bastard is still alive in this world. You, what kind of medicine are you selling in your gourd? Coo 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 coo. While Yi Yu was talking to himself, the soul beast under his feet let out an extremely strange sound. After the sound of the beast's cry faded away, the sound of the beast's cry became louder and louder. It didn't stop for a moment, and it sounded like a frog singing in a pond. Following that, several strange-looking soul beasts began to appear within 100 kilometers of the city. On the back of each soul beast stood several strangely dressed soul warriors. Of course, the clothes of these soul warriors were different from each other. 30% of the soul warriors wore clothes that were similar to Yi Yu's, with only a small difference. The other 70% of the soul warriors wore clothes that were completely different from Yi Yu's. These soul warriors' clothes were very neat and tidy. They were symmetrical on both sides and had very few decorations. In the middle of their smooth robes, there was even a silk ribbon that looked like a belt. Even more strange was the fact that these soul warriors had their hair tied together. Some of them had their hair tied up with hairpins, while others had their hair tied up with a cloth. Coo coo coo, the sound of a pigeon's cry could be heard again. Then, a giant soul beast with pure white feathers over its body flew over from the distance. On the back of this soul beast was a man wearing white soul armor. He held a bone fan in his hand and had a smile on his face as he flew towards Yi Yu's location. Seeing this man coming over, Yi Yu hurriedly put on a smile on his face. With a tap of his foot, the soul beast flapped its wings and slowly came to a stop in midair. It's been a long time since we last met. Fu Man Ho Yen pays his respects here. The soul warrior didn't speak the strange language of Meng Mountains, but the language commonly used in sword domain. Greetings, old brother Ho Yen, Yi Yu said with a smile. The last time I saw old brother was 10 years ago. I didn't think that 10 years would pass in the blink of an eye. Old brother's magnificence is still the same as before. This one is truly envious. Huh, you're too kind. Ho Yen laughed and waved his hand. How can this little brother's stinky skin compare to Fu Man's? Who doesn't know that Fu Man of Shibai village is a brave and intelligent warrior? If Fu Man didn't have such intelligence, how could Ji Man have taken a fancy to him? You flatter me, you flatter me. Yi Yu laughed. This one is only living in Shibai village. How can I compare to old brother Ho Yen, who is a direct descendant of Back Earth village? Old brother Ho Yen has found a concubine. Wouldn't your children be Ji Man and Elder Wu? Shu, Ho Yan's expression changed slightly. He hurriedly looked around and said, Fu Man, my wife isn't a concubine. Please be lenient with your words. Don't speak nonsense. If others know about this, I will have a miserable life. Hee hee, so what? Yi Yu laughed in a low voice. Chapter 28:39. How could Ho Yen dare to let him continue? Then, he quickly added, oh right, I have to thank Fu Man. This place is under the jurisdiction of Shibai village, and we shouldn't have gone too deep into it. But now, the battle with the sword, the sword cultivators is too intense, and I'm afraid that Shibai village can't organize too many soul warriors. That's why I've decided to send more soul warriors here. I just wanted to greet Ji Man, but I didn't expect that Ji Man would be willing to send Fu Man here. I'm really surprised. Ho Tu village's reaction is Shibai village's problem, and Shibai village's problem is also Ho Tu village's problem. Yi Yu smiled and said, I didn't expect that. The reason for the drought in Meng Mountains is because of this. Since Ho Tu village is eradicating the evil for the people of Meng Mountains, how can Shibai village not contribute? I've just returned from Meng Mountains, and I've received Ji Man's order to come here and meet you. Once this is done, you and I will both be the heroes of Meng Mountains. Let's not talk about my Fu Man, but what you think. You should be confident, right? Ha ha ha. I hope you and I can succeed. Ho Yen laughed. Also. Yi Yu's smile faded, and his face turned cold. My clan was wiped out by sword cultivators. I'm the one who was born, and I've made it my life's goal to avenge my clan. Sword Realm, swordsman, they have nothing to do with me. I'm just a Fu Man from Shibai village. Yes, Fu Man is right. It's all my fault. Ho Yen smiled and said, after this mission is over, I'll hold a banquet in Ho Tu village to apologize. That won't be necessary. A smile appeared on Yi Yu's face as he waved his hand and said, from now on, I'll just treat myself as a member of Meng Mountains, and have no other thoughts. That's why, when you called me, I rushed here. Not only do I want to help you, but I also want to erase the evil from Meng Mountains, and return Meng Mountains to its former glory. Good. Ho Yen clapped his hands and said, the more Fu Man talks, the more I feel that I'm wrong. If Fu Man needs anything in the future, please let me know. Brother Ho Yen, are you serious? Ho Yan's words were perfunctory, but Yi Yu asked. Oh. When Ho Yen heard this, he was slightly stunned. Immediately, a trace of realization appeared on his face. He said with a fake smile, Fu Man, I feel that something is wrong. How could you leave the Shibai stronghold so easily? Even if it was little brother's message and that item, it was impossible for Fu Man to come here personally. So Fu Man was waiting for me here. Brother, I've been searching all over Meng Mountains, but I couldn't find anyone I could entrust this task to. Then, when I saw brother's message, my eyes lit up. So. I immediately urged all the people in the village to come and help you. Yi Yu said with a smile. Then, he looked around and whispered, of course, if you need my help in the future, the people of Shibai village will support you unconditionally. Ho Yen rolled his eyes and looked at Night Rain and the disciples on Night Rain's back. He smiled and said, since Fu Man is in trouble, how can I not help? Fu Man, please come over. I would like to hear what you have to say. Good. Yi Yu didn't hesitate, and with a flash of sword light, she landed on Ho Yan's soul beast. Ho Yan's soul beast spread its wings and flew away from the other spirit warriors. After Yi Yu finished speaking, Ho Yan's face was filled with shock. Without thinking, he waved his hand and said, "Fu Man, this is your Shibai village's internal affairs. I am the heir of the Ho Tu village. How can I casually participate? I can't. Hee hee, brother." Night Rain seemed to have expected Ho Yan's reaction. A strange smile appeared on his face. He whispered, "Although this is my Shibai village's internal affair, but it's also Meng Mountain's internal affair. You seem to know the relationship between Shibai village and Ho Tu village better than I do. In fact, I don't need to say anything else. You have a lot of heirs in Back Earth village. There are many behind you, but there aren't many ahead of you. Why did you work so hard for so many years? Is it to find the reason for the drought in Meng Mountains? If it's really so noble and simple, just pretend I didn't say anything. I'll turn around and leave." After saying that, Night Rain paused for a moment. He glanced at Ho Yan, who seemed to be thinking about something. Then, he smiled and said, "Being able to work for Meng Mountains is naturally our goal. But, if we can, get the support of the people of Wu Village, get their respect, and get the position of Grand Wu under their support. Then, we can do more things for them, isn't that better? As far as I know, your Ho Tu village will soon decide the next Grand Wu or G-Man. That Ho Ming and Ho Yi seems to have something going on. That's why Brother Ho Yan is so active in preparing for this, hoping that you can do something about the drought in Meng Mountains. If you didn't have this opportunity, you wouldn't have sent a message to Shibai village, would you?" While speaking, Night Rain was observing Ho Yan's expression. "Isn't this the reason why I came to you? Isn't it because we're in the same situation? You and I can only work together and support each other. Only then can we do something great in Meng Mountains. Sai, the situation of my Ho Tu village is not as simple as you think." Ho Yan finally opened his mouth. Ha ha ha. Night Rain didn't wait for him to finish. He laughed and said, "Simple things are complicated when you think about them, and complicated things are simple when you do them. Brother Ho Yan, I've given you my heart today, and I'm sincerely here to form an alliance with you. No matter how simple or complicated your problem is, I'll face it with you. As for me, I'm just asking you to kill a man you don't even know. This man is a cultivator. He's the enemy of Meng Mountains. What are you worried about? In fact, if I didn't want to be honest with you, I'd just say he's a cultivator. How would you know?" "Fine." Ho Yan's face showed a strange expression. He nodded and said, "Since he's a cultivator, it's fine. But if he's recognized by G-Man of Shibai village, then don't blame me." Hearing this, Night Rain was overjoyed. He clapped his hands and said, of course, I won't fight with my brother." Unfortunately, before he could finish his words, a loud beast cry sounded in the distance. It sounded a little tragic. Ho Yan's expression changed slightly and he said anxiously, "Fu Man, quick, it seems that a boy has found that guy. We can't let him run away, okay?" Hearing the beast cry, Night Rain's heart skipped a beat. Since he had reached an agreement with Ho Yan, he knew that this matter was very important to both him and Ho Yan. He didn't delay and flew back to his spirit beast. Without hesitation, he stepped on the ground. The spirit beast flapped its wings again and flew toward the beast cry. Ho Yan's spirit beast seemed to be even faster. It was already more than 10 feet away from him. This. Millions of people in Meng Mountains were worried about Xiao Mao's arrival at Yu. They did not know where Xiao Mao had gone to. At this moment, Xiao Mao was floating in an unknown space. His ears were silent, and his limbs were motionless. He was staring dumbfoundedly at the unimaginably huge phoenix above his head. Yes, the phoenix totem on the island had turned into a huge suction force. Xiao Mao couldn't resist at all and was sucked into it. Under the suction force, Xiao Mao's body kept rolling. It seemed that he couldn't stop. When the suction force disappeared, an indescribable feeling arose in his heart. If he was on the ground, an irresistible suction force would pull him firmly to the ground. If he wanted to move forward, he would have to lift his feet with all his strength. Even if a cultivator could fly, it would still consume his dharma power. However, in this place, the suction force that he was used to had completely disappeared. A feeling of freedom appeared, and this freedom made Xiao Mao unable to get used to it. His body was almost unable to move. He wanted to lift his feet, but before he could lift them, his whole body was lying down. He wanted to lift his hands, but his whole body was tilting slightly. The most terrifying thing was that the energy that was flowing freely in his meridians was now in the same state as him. It was floating in the air in his meridians, as if it didn't listen to the circulation of his heart technique. What should I do? Xiao Mao was very anxious. When he looked around, an indescribable light flashed above his head. Xiao Mao only raised his head slightly, and an inconceivable feeling arose in his heart. Above his head, there was a huge phoenix. The size of this phoenix had long surpassed his imagination. 10,000 miles in size? 1,000,000 miles in size? Xiao Mao couldn't measure it, but he could clearly see that even the smallest cold feather on the phoenix was as huge as a mountain range. He was more insignificant than a little ant. Although the phoenix didn't move, a majestic aura and a light screen as vast as the sea enveloped this space. Outside this light screen, there was endless darkness. It was so dark that it made one's heart tremble, so dark that it made one's heart feel unsettled. Xiao Mao. A voice as small as an ant sounded in his ears. Oh, Xiao Mao was startled. He opened his mouth to respond, but he could only open his mouth. He couldn't make a single sound. Sound transmission. Xiao Hua's voice sounded. Xiao Mao suddenly woke up, and turned his head to look elsewhere. When he saw Xiao Hua's situation clearly, he couldn't help but laugh. Xiao Hua seemed to be in an even more sorry state than Xiao Mao. His head was facing Xiao Mao, and his feet were facing up. It was no different from being upside down. Moreover, the clothes that were lifted up didn't cover Xiao Hua's head. Instead, it was casually spread out like a flower in full bloom. As for the voice from before, not a single word could be heard. Chapter 2840. What are you laughing at? Xiao Hua's voice was heard again, sounding very strange. Big brother, Xiao Mao held back his laughter and said, why are you upside down? It looks very strange. My head is upside down? Are you sure? Look for yourself, it's your head that's upside down. Xiao Hua finally understood why Xiao Mao was laughing, and he also started laughing. Me? Xiao Mao was stunned, and looked to his other side with difficulty. Indeed, Li Zongbao and Fairy Hongxia were standing there with their heads down, looking at his feet in disbelief. It seemed that Xiao Mao's head was really upside down. Damn it, this place is very strange. Xiao Mao laughed. How can you tell up from down? We're all upside down. While he was speaking, Xiao Hua's figure suddenly moved horizontally and flew towards a certain direction. Moreover, it was extremely slow, as if it was not strenuous at all. After flying for a moment, he suddenly stopped, and then flew towards Xiao Mao again. Big brother. How can you fly? Little brother's true yuan can't move. Xiao Mao asked curiously. I'm afraid you won't be able to learn it. Xiao Hua laughed. Why can't little brother learn it? Xiao Mao asked curiously. It's very simple. I didn't use any flying technique. I just drew out the true essence from my Jin Dan and pushed it in one direction. Then, my body easily flew in another direction. Xiao Hua shrugged his shoulders with some difficulty and said with a smile. So it's like that. Xiao Mao was helpless. At this moment, Fairy Hongxia opened her mouth again, as if saying something to Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua didn't bother to say anything to Xiao Mao, and floated towards Fairy Hongxia's side. However, Xiao Hua only flew for about 10 feet, and a crimson-red brilliance suddenly bloomed around Fairy Hongxia's body. That brilliance was the color of blood, and was abnormally gorgeous, as if a fresh flower had suddenly appeared in the air. Although the blood-colored brilliance was poignant and beautiful, within the brilliance, Fairy Hongxia's face revealed an inexplicable expression. Xiao Hua, who was doing his best to activate his Jin Dan, was also stunned. Immediately, a kind of incomparable fear arose from the bottom of his heart. This is bad. Xiao Hua hurriedly looked around, as if he was trying to find the source of the danger. However, before he could see anything, the blood light around Fairy Hongxia's body suddenly stretched out, like a burning pillar of fire being blown up by the wind, floating straight towards the phoenix. In the silent space, a sudden vibration was produced. A sound that directly penetrated into Xiao Hua's heart came from under his feet. Immediately after, an extremely strong gravitational force came from the phoenix. It was like a huge hand that didn't allow Xiao Hua to resist in the slightest as it firmly grabbed him and pulled him towards the phoenix with all its strength. Xiao Hua was greatly shocked. He had great strength to begin with, so he was very clear about the difference between magic power and strength. He knew, this kind of pure strength didn't have any fluctuation of magic power. It was basically a kind of strength between himself and the phoenix. This kind of strength was so vast and so unparalleled. Even if Xiao Hua converted all the magic power in his body into strength, he still wouldn't be able to contend against it. Is this the power of heaven and earth? Xiao Hua looked at the phoenix that was gradually being pulled closer and closer in disbelief. An indescribable vibration, and gradually, heat rose from his body. Not good. Xiao Hua was slightly shocked. He hurriedly mobilized his magic power again. Unfortunately, the magic power seemed to be intermittent and couldn't support the protective golden light around him. Looking at Xiao Hua's surroundings, Fairy Hongxia and the rest were also in the same position as Xiao Hua. However, Fairy Hongxia's body was shrouded in a crimson glow. The glow flickered, protecting Fairy Hongxia tightly. I see. Xiao Hua understood. This blood-colored brilliance was a kind of protection. It was to protect Fairy Hongxia, who had entered this space, and also to protect the descendants of the Kai family and the Ice Phoenix bloodline. As for himself and the rest, he had no relationship with the Kai family at all. Of course, he would be listed as an enemy by the Kai family's ancestral shrine. This kind of method was the best way to eliminate the enemy and screen the descendants. Whoa! A sharp sound came from Xiao Hua's ears, and a faint fiery light began to appear around Xiao Hua's body. It was precisely Xiao Hua's protective light that was produced due to the friction with the surrounding air as it fell at an extremely fast speed, Big Brother. At this time, Xiao Hua also heard Xiao Mao's shout, but he saw that Xiao Mao was still following beside him with his head down. His whole body was also on fire, and Xiao Mao's clothes had already started to burn. Innate primordial water. Almost immediately, Xiao Hua thought of the innate primordial water in the clear water bottle. Xiao Hua did not dare to be negligent. He hurriedly tried to activate the Buddha Sarira. Xiao Hua thought that the Buddha Sarira would be as simple as primordial energy. Who would have thought that the Buddha Sarira would be the same as usual? It did not take much effort to activate it. The innate primordial water was like a light blue water curtain, protecting Xiao Hua and the rest. Xiao Lang, let me out quickly. Unexpectedly, Fairy Hongxia said anxiously in just a moment. Under the innate primordial water, I can't sense the guidance of the ancestral phoenix statue, okay? Xiao Hua knew the power of the innate primordial water. He hurriedly withdrew it from Fairy Hongxia's side. Rumble, the vibrations grew louder, and the group's speed became faster. Although the light in his body was slowly fading away, that intense void was replacing it. Big Brother. Xiao Mao called out with some hesitation. Beside him, Li Zongbao hurriedly pointed his hand and transmitted his voice, quiet. Xiao Mao was stunned and quickly shut his mouth. However, Xiao Hua had already opened his eyes. A thoughtful light flashed in his eyes, and he said with a smile, it's already too late. Immediately after, Xiao Hua looked around and saw that this was a space of unknown size. Outside this space, there were countless rays of light flowing, very similar to the gorgeous brilliance in the night sky of Huan country. Looking at the space, there were many specks of stars floating above. These specks of stars all had the same appearance, and they were square tokens. There were faint fluctuations coming from these tokens, and occasionally, there would be faint phoenix patterns appearing from time to time. This is the Kai family's ancestral hall? Xiao Hua was really stunned. It wasn't that he hadn't seen an ancestral hall before. An ordinary ancestral hall, like Zhongling Mountain Village, was an ancestral hall with the tablets of the ancestors placed there. A slightly more bizarre ancestral hall, like the one in Yellow Flower Ridge, was a palace with the tablets of the previous headmasters placed there, as well as the mysterious gods that were worshipped. When he came, Xiao Hua had already imagined the Kai family's ancestral hall. However, he thought that Qin Yang's Kai family was at most similar to Zhongling Mountain Village. This ancestral hall was a secret ancestral hall, or perhaps there was a rather large palace under the ancestral hall? Chapter 2841. However, Xiao Hua did not expect the Kai family's ancestral shrine to be far beyond his expectations. How was this an ancestral shrine? It was even grander than the Xian Kong Pavilion in Haoming City. Legacy Realm? Suddenly, Xiao Hua thought of the legacy realm of the Yu family in Falling Gold Mountain. Looking at this scene, the Qin Yang Kai family must be the descendants of the divine beast Phoenix. Their ancestral shrine already had such a scene, then what about the so-called legacy realm of the Yu family in Falling Gold Mountain? That was the legacy realm that was known as an interface. Could this be related to the legacy realm? Xiao Hua's eyes turned and looked around. In addition to these ranks, there were also colorful lights. Fairy Hongxia's figure was lying in mid-air, and this posture was used when she was practicing the flying shadow technique. Seeing Xiao Hua looking around, Li Zongbao hurriedly transmitted his voice, "Junior brother, let's go down. Don't delay junior sister's comprehension." As he spoke, he took the lead and walked a few steps in the air. There seemed to be invisible stairs in the air. Sure enough, Xiao Hua also walked a few steps and was actually far away from Fairy Hongxia. Hence, the three of them simply walked a few miles before stopping. Damn it, Xiao Mao was the first to speak. This Kai family is really rich. How can their ancestral shrine be so big? When I was in Xuanyan school, I really underestimated these cultivation families. Indeed. Even someone as knowledgeable as Li Zongbao nodded and said, "If junior sister didn't bring me here, I would also think that the Kai family was just an ordinary family. Why is the Kai family's ancestral shrine in Million Mountain Meng? How can it have such a grand scene? This array, what kind of divine ability is needed to set it up?" Xiao Hua asked a few questions in one breath. Li Zongbao and Xiao Mao looked at each other. Both of them had the same question in their hearts, but who could answer? I only know that although this place is vast, its true size is no more than 50 kilometers. In fact, it's really the size of an ordinary clan's ancestral hall. Li Zongbao hesitated for a moment, then said in a low voice, "However, there's an array here that's similar to the Meru array, and it's shrinking us. As for this totem, even though it's only the size of a hill, in our eyes, it's comparable to the entire Dawn Rain continent." Sumeru Formation? Xiao Mao was slightly taken aback. He asked curiously, "What kind of formation is that?" "Your storage pouch," Li Zongbao reminded. Many things, regardless of their size, can be stored in storage bags. This storage bag has a simple Sumeru array formation. So that's how it is. Xiao Mao came to a realization and looked around. What about now? Are we inside the Phoenix Totem? It should be. Xiao Hua nodded. That kind of extremely high-speed flight from before was like a teleportation array. When it reached a certain level, it teleported us into the Phoenix Totem. I've encountered such a powerful restriction before. However, he still had a lingering fear in his heart. But that huge suction force from the totem just now was really powerful. I don't know how this restriction was formed. Unexpectedly, Li Zongbao's words stunned Xiao Hua on the spot. I'm afraid it's the totem's own suction force on us. Of course, this suction force doesn't have any fluctuations of energy. It's naturally formed. It could really be the suction force of the phoenix totem. A clear cry faintly rang out. In the distance, Fairy Hongxia's body flashed brilliantly, and the crystal-clear phoenix celestial body was released. Instantly, even Xiao Hua and the rest could see that countless fireflies were flying in from outside the space. They were like moths to a flame, and they all fell into Fairy Hongxia's celestial body. The celestial body immediately emitted the same brilliance as the phoenix totem outside the space. This brilliance was like breathing, and it was very uniform. More fireflies flew in, enveloping Fairy Hongxia's physical body and celestial body. An extremely beautiful cocoon of light was born around Fairy Hongxia's body, the brilliance continued to flash, and the fireflies continued to pour in. Very quickly, more than 10 days passed. The cocoon of light did not expand, but it gradually solidified. Xiao Hua and the rest closed their eyes and sat quietly in the distance, waiting for Fairy Hongxia to emerge from the cocoon. Whoosh whoosh. Suddenly, a sound like the rising and falling of the tide came from the cocoon of light. Cracks gradually appeared on the surface of the cocoon of light. These cracks rapidly expanded, and it collapsed rapidly. An extremely loud phoenix cry rang out again, as if there were two sounds at the same time. One was from the phoenix totem outside the space, and the other was from Fairy Hongxia's phoenix celestial body. Following the phoenix cry, the collapsing cocoon of light suddenly retracted, and the entire cocoon of light was hidden within Fairy Hongxia's physical body. At the same time, a five-colored brilliance flashed across the sky, and a firework flashed across the sky, landing right on top of the cocoon of light. Fairy Hongxia's body continued to flash, and all the brilliance gathered in between her eyebrows. A blood-red phoenix the size of a thumb, spreading its wings and about to fly, appeared there. Looking at the sparkling and translucent phoenix celestial body, it had returned to its original state. The five-colored phenomenon from before had disappeared, and it looked the same as before. Moreover, the celestial body had shrunk to the size of 6 feet. Fairy Hongxia chuckled, and looked up. She opened her mouth, and the five-colored brilliance fell into her mouth. Her body did not move, but with a flap of the phoenix celestial body's wings, she immediately flew to the side of Xiao Hua and the rest at lightning speed. My goodness, senior sister flew too fast. Xiao Mao and the rest had already stood up when they heard the commotion. Xiao Mao could not help but exclaim in shock. I have obtained the phoenix legacy of my Kai family. I can move freely within the phoenix enchantment. Fairy Hongxia said proudly. Good. Li Zongbao clapped. Congratulations, junior sister, for not making a wasted trip. Thank you, senior brother. It's all because of your help that I can come here safely. Fairy Hongxia bowed and thanked him. What is the phoenix legacy? Can every descendant of the Kai family obtain it? Xiao Hua asked curiously. Not at all, Fairy Hongxia chuckled, just like junior brother Xiao Mao. If one's bloodline is not pure, how can one obtain it? Or if one's cultivation does not reach a certain level, how can one enter the ancestral shrine? Moreover, my Kai family's phoenix legacy should be different from junior brother's, who is the descendant of god Shibai. This phoenix legacy can only be obtained by one person in every generation. Only when this person dies, will the inheritance divine light return to the ancestral shrine and await the arrival of the next inheritor. So amazing. Xiao Hua was dumbfounded. He looked at Xiao Mao and then at Fairy Hongxia. These two people's luck seemed to be better than his. They really had a good background. Better than anyone else. Actually, I don't know about all these. Fairy Hongxia smiled. I only wanted to come to the ancestral shrine to see if there were any opportunities. Only when I was guided by the Phoenix Legacy's divine light and merged with the Phoenix Legacy did I understand so much. Moreover, within the divine light, there are many other things which will be slowly unearthed as I cultivate. Senior sister's cultivation. Xiao Mao could not help but cast a spell. However, Fairy Hongxia's cultivation did not seem to have any special changes. Of course, my cultivation won't have any changes in a dozen days. Fairy Hongxia smiled. These 10 days are only the initial stages of merging with the divine light. When the divine light completely merges with me, my cultivation will gradually speed up. However, based on my estimation, I will definitely be able to step into the golden core stage by next year. As she spoke, Fairy Hongxia opened her mouth, and the 5-colored brilliance flew out and landed in her soft hands. The brilliance gradually disappeared, revealing the true form of a phoenix feather. This is my Kai family's phoenix token. Fairy Hongxia said happily, this is a feather that my ancestors obtained from the heavenly phoenix. Its profundity is endless. Congratulations, senior sister. Xiao Mao said happily. Everyone's luck is different. Junior brother's fate seems to be more powerful than mine. Fairy Hongxia held the phoenix token and said, I thought that coming to Meng Mountains was my business, but I did not expect that junior brother's business is more important than mine. She then looked at Xiao Hua and Li Zongbao and said embarrassedly, on the other hand, Xiao Lang and senior brother came empty-handed and returned empty-handed. As long as you have a chance encounter, wouldn't you be much stronger than me? Xiao Hua naturally understood that what he had obtained was not any less than Xiao Mao and Fairy Hongxia. He smiled and said, senior brother Li, on the other hand, came here for nothing. Not at all. I even obtained a spirit item. Li Zongbao said. At this moment, the space began to vibrate. A repulsive force similar to the one before was produced. Don't worry, the phoenix barrier is about to close. Fairy Hongxia said unhurriedly, only when my phoenix divine light returns will the phoenix barrier have a chance to open. We don't need to struggle, we just need to let the barrier push us out. As soon as her voice fell, everyone's figures soared into the sky, flying out at a speed even faster than Xiao Hua's imperial thundershock. Only this time, there were no sparks forming around them. Xiao Hua hurriedly closed his eyes, trying to comprehend the rare speed, Gigi. After an unknown amount of time, an extremely hot aura suddenly surrounded Xiao Hua. Moreover, before Xiao Hua could open his eyes, a very familiar sound of an ape's cry came from above his head. Then, an unpleasant stench rushed into Xiao Hua's mouth and nose. This is... Xiao Hua stared blankly. Before he could open his eyes and release his divine sense, a sharp sound that seemed to tear the air apart resounded from his forehead, and a piercing pain appeared on his skin. Xiao Hua's body was naturally surrounded by a protective golden light, but he did not dare to be careless. He shrank his head and curled his body into a ball. In an extremely strange posture, he flew to the side like a spinning windmill. Chapter 2842. Rip, an ear-piercing sound of silk being torn apart rang out. An extremely sharp force slashed right at Xiao Hua's right arm. Wherever the brilliance flashed, the golden light protecting his body was actually torn apart by this force, and the brilliance surrounding Xiao Hua's body was also extinguished. Fire ape. Xiao Hua was greatly shocked. He immediately activated the wind escape technique, and floated several zhang away. His gaze swept across, and sure enough, he saw 100 zhang tall fire ape. This fire ape had an extremely ferocious face, and the wide mouth and fangs on its face were suffused with a kind of blood-red color. The fire ape's fur was golden yellow, and from time to time, flames would emerge from its fur, lingering around the fire ape. A tyrannical aura also enveloped the nearby area. Wasn't this the golden core stage fire ape from Flaming Forest Marsh? Why did this guy run to Million Man Mountain? Xiao Hua stood in midair. He swept with his divine sense, but didn't see the figures of Li Zongbao and the others. Only then did he feel slightly relieved. His gaze once again fell on the fire ape, and he thought very strangely. Looking at the fire ape again, within its wild and untamed eyes, there was clearly astonishment, as if it was as confused as Xiao Hua. However, when it clearly saw Xiao Hua's appearance, a kind of joy actually appeared in its eyes. Aoo, a cheerful long howl, its bloody mouth rushed into the air, and a faint flame spurted out. Immediately after, it crossed its arms and hammered its own chest, causing sparks to fly out from its fur, as if they were blooming fireworks. Sun Moon Corona, Xiaohua's eyes narrowed. He immediately thought of the ancestral artifacts of Misty Mountain and Flying Phoenix Ridge. Those things seemed to have a restraining effect on the fire ape, and at the same time, the fire ape seemed to be somewhat interested in the Sun Moon Corona. However, before Xiaohua could take out the Sun Moon Corona, the fire ape not far away lowered its head, and stared at Xiaohua with a fierce gaze. Flames flickered under its feet, and it flew towards Xiaohua. Its huge fist streaked across the air, and flames were also produced. It was like two fireballs were held in the fire ape's hand, and it rushed towards Xiaohua. Ha ha ha, I've already met you 3 times. Xiaohua laughed loudly, as the saying goes, there's only 1 time and 2 times, but not 3 times and 4 times. Now, I'll let you know how powerful I am. As he spoke, Xiaohua waved his hand and took out several fire talismans. He urged his magic power and threw them at the fire ape. Roar! The fire ape seemed to have understood Xiaohua's words. It let out a loud roar and a trace of disdain flashed through its eyes. Its giant hand was like a mountain as it smashed down towards Xiaohua, who was like a toy in its eyes. Rumble! The fire talisman itself didn't have much magic power fluctuation. When Xiaohua activated it, this time, it absorbed a huge amount of spiritual qi of heaven and earth. One after another, huge fireballs exploded around the fire ape. That ferocious force and the fierce flames all rolled towards the fire ape. Boom, 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 the fire ape was clearly somewhat surprised, but there was no panic in its eyes. The fist that was smashing towards Xiaohua changed slightly. It hammered continuously, like the beating of a drum, and hit the numerous fireballs. The fireball talismans, which even swordsmen would find difficult to dodge, were actually destroyed by the fire ape as if they were playing with fire. The last fireball was even destroyed by the fire ape's palm. Heh heh, it's indeed the fire ape. This fire controlling technique is innate. Ordinary people can only look up to its dust. Xiaohua sighed. He boasted that he already had some understanding of the divine fire technique, but in terms of fire controlling technique, he was clearly inferior to this fire ape. He didn't have the confidence that he could easily crush the fire talismans when they exploded. Roar! The fire ape cracked open its mouth, as if it was mocking and showing off. It waved its hands and a series of fireballs were born from its hands. It threw them towards Xiaohua as if it was playing with fire. Xiaohua saw the mocking in the fire ape's eyes and his heart was also stunned. Without thinking, he waved his hand and dozens of fire talismans once again flew out. Rumble! The fire talismans exploded between Xiaohua and the fire ape. The flames soared into the sky and enveloped the surrounding area of 100 zhang. The shockwave even stirred up the dust within 100 zhang. There were even some mountain rocks that were blown away by the fireballs. The entire scene was a complete mess. Roar! This time, the fire ape was completely enraged. It used all its strength to open its bloody mouth and its teeth made a ga-ga sound. With a loud roar, its 10 zhang tall body slightly swayed and actually flashed within the flames. It quickly rushed in front of Xiaohua and its huge fist smashed towards Xiaohua's body with the sound of the wind, fire escape. Xiaohua was even more stunned. This was the first time the fire ape used the fire escape in front of him. Even that day in the flame forest swamp, it didn't use it when it was in a dangerous situation. It seemed that the fire ape's strength had greatly improved in these past few decades. However, when Xiaohua saw the fire ape approaching him, he was not afraid at all. With a wave of his hand, he took out his enormous spiked club. With a woo sound, he welcomed the fire ape's fist head-on. Suddenly seeing the huge wolf tooth club, the fire ape was also slightly stunned. Looking at Xiaohua waving the wolf tooth club that was bigger than itself like a baby, it was really frightened. Pang! A loud sound echoed. While the fire ape was still in a daze, the wolf tooth club hit its fist. The fire ape's fist was shaken and the magic tool wolf tooth club also let out a zzz sound. The fire ape lowered its head and looked at its fist in disbelief. Soon after, it raised its head and its eyes were already scarlet red. Roar roar, the fire ape roared 3 times and waved its arms as if it was angry. The flames around its body also suddenly rushed out and attacked Xiaohua's head. Come! How could Xiaohua be afraid of it? He roared without fear and waved his wolf tooth club. His body flew up and fought with the fire ape. A deafening roar sounded and flames splashed around the surroundings. Not to mention the rocks, even the dust was refined by the fire ape's flames and turned into pitch-black beads that rolled around. The mess on the rocks was also the remnants of the flames. Furthermore, countless large holes were left behind by the fire ape's fists or by Xiaohua's wolf tooth club. After fighting for the time it takes to drink a cup of tea, Fairy Hong Xia and the rest still didn't appear. Instead, the fire ape's roars became even louder. The fire ape wasn't proficient in controlling fire and its arms had a huge strength that could tear apart tigers and leopards. In this kind of close combat, other than in a group fight, it had never suffered such a big loss. Now that it saw a cultivator who was much shorter than it and was actually in a deadlock with it, it had long lost its rationality. Its eyes were abnormally scarlet red and it opened its bloody mouth that emitted a disgusting stench, as if it would only be satisfied if it ate Xiaohua alive. Peng! Xiaohua's figure was like a light wind and flew out from under the fire ape's armpit. He didn't even turn his head and casually swung his wolf tooth club, smashing it on the fire ape's back. Although the fire ape's skin was thick and its body was protected by flames, when sparks flew, the fire ape's figure actually staggered and fell forward. However, the fire ape actually took advantage of this moment and lifted its foot, as if it wanted to stomp Xiaohua into meat paste. Go! Xiaohua didn't hesitate and raised the wolf tooth club in his hand, hitting it on the fire ape's foot. "Ay-oh!" The fire ape let out a sorrowful cry, as if it was in pain. It hugged its foot and fell in midair. This fire ape is quite interesting. Xiaohua was somewhat hypocritical, however, it's too arrogant and unruly. Woo! Immediately after, the fire ape pounded its own chest and opened its mouth. A turbulent pillar of fire rushed out from its mouth and enveloped Xiaohua. Ha ha ha, you want to compete with this young master in fire techniques? Xiaohua laughed loudly. The wolf tooth club in his hand disappeared after a pause. Immediately after, he opened his mouth and spat out a cold flame, like a fire net, to meet the fire ape's attack. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. The 2 types of fire fused together. However, Xiaohua's cold flame only lasted for a moment before it was broken by many thin flames. It was as if thousands of small fire snakes were licking Xiaohua's left side. "Io, this fire ape is really powerful." Xiaohua faintly smiled. With a wave of his hand, he took out the magic bottle that contained the innate true fire. This magic bottle couldn't be considered a high-grade item and Xiaohua didn't really refine it. At this moment, he activated his magic power and a wisp of innate true fire flickered within the magic bottle. Immediately after, a suction force was produced and the fire ape's pillar of fire was sucked into it, leaving not even a drop behind. Woo-woo! A trace of astonishment flashed through the fire ape's scarlet eyes. It seemed to have seen the power of the innate true fire. However, at this moment, it was already controlled by anger. It opened its bloody mouth again and an unconcealable confinement force was produced from its mouth. Chapter 2843. Previously, when Xiaohua was in the Sword Tomb, he had occasionally revealed his nascent soul stage hand. However, at that time, it was not too mature. It could even be said that he only had a little bit of experience. During this period of time, although Xiaohua hadn't used it again, he had always been thinking about it in his heart. He had always been trying to comprehend it. With the heaven and earth sleeve as a foundation, although this nascent soul hand might not be pure, when he really used it now, it was quite decent. The hurricane mixed with the gravel and sand condensed into a huge palm. It was as if a real huge hand was grabbing towards the inner core. A restraining force that could compete with or even surpass the restraining force of the inner core was born from the hand. Although it hadn't really grasped the inner core, the previously ferocious golden core had now lost all its momentum under the giant hand. The previously spiraling golden core had become sluggish, and it didn't even move in the air. At this moment, the fire ape's crimson eyes became somewhat clear. A trace of panic flashed through it. It really could not understand why Xiaohua, who it had met once before, was so powerful now. The fire ape roared angrily. The crimson inner core suddenly flashed with a circle of intense brilliance. Even though Xiaohua was far away, he still felt an indescribable heat. The nascent soul stage hand that was covering the inner core was immediately burned by this heat and dissipated. Powerful, Xiaohua was greatly shocked. He hurriedly flung his Taoist robe, wanting to use the heaven and earth sleeve technique to stabilize the nascent soul stage hand. At this moment, the fire ape's inner core suddenly retreated and fell into the fire ape's mouth. Moreover, the fire ape did not hesitate at all. Flames flashed under its feet, and it prepared to escape into the distance. At this time, you still want to leave? Xiaohua sneered. His figure swayed, and lightning flashed under his feet as he chased after the fire ape. Roar! The fire ape did not expect Xiaohua's flying speed to be so fast. In a moment, he had already arrived behind it. It hurriedly roared, and that roar shook the surroundings, echoing in the mountains. Hearing the fire ape's cry and the fire ape's anxious expression, Xiaohua suddenly had a bad feeling. Damn it, this fire ape is so strange. The first time I saw it in Flaming Forest Swamp, it was with the Thunder Beast. It seemed like it was the one who lured the Thunder Beast here. But today, it actually came all the way to the Meng Mountains. Could it be that there are still Thunder Beasts here? Just as he was thinking about it, a spiritual sense comparable to that of a nascent soul cultivator swept over, and a hoarse voice rang out from afar. No way. As that divine sense swept past Xiaohua, a scorching and ferocious feeling spread out from that divine sense, causing Xiaohua's divine sense to feel a stinging pain. What kind of spirit beast is this? How can it be so powerful? When the fire ape sensed this divine thought, it let out a loud cry of joy and flew towards the source of the sound without caring about anything else. Even if another lightning beast comes, you can forget about escaping from my hands. Xiaohua knew that this fire ape had some connection with the Misty Mountain. The powerful restriction in the Sun-Moon Corona most likely needed this fire ape, and the soul seal inside had to be unsealed for Shui. How could Xiaohua release this fire ape? While thinking, Xiaohua waved his hand, and the Sun-Moon Corona appeared in his hand. An extremely sorrowful cry was heard. As soon as the Sun-Moon Corona appeared, it was sensed by the fire ape. The fire ape turned its head to look at the Sun-Moon Corona, which was overflowing with brilliance, and immediately let out a cry, fleeing even more desperately. Go! Xiaohua urged his magic power, and the Sun-Moon Corona within the Sun-Moon Corona rotated like a sun, and the Sun-Moon Corona rotated around the Sun-Moon Corona in the opposite direction. The Sun-Moon Corona was incomparably brilliant as it chased after the fire ape. In the blink of an eye, the Sun-Moon Corona caught up with the fire ape. A powerful suction force was generated from the Sun-Moon Corona, enveloping the fire ape. Withdraw, Xiaohua faintly smiled. The Sun-Moon Corona let out a buzzing sound, and the entire magic artifact shook. The suction force was like waves, rushing towards the fire ape's head. The fire ape raised its hand high up, covering its head. Its facial features were all distorted, and it felt extreme pain. A faintly discernible fire shadow appeared on top of the fire ape's head, gradually moving towards the Sun-Moon Corona. A hoarse cry was heard, and the divine sense in the distance became even more furious. Xiaohua felt as if the air around him was about to be ignited, and a kind of dryness that he had never experienced before gradually emerged from the bottom of his heart. Xiaohua did not dare to release his divine sense, and raised his head to look. Right at the origin of the sound, a 3-zhang tall monster with a body full of red fur was flying towards him on a red cloud. This monster was very strange. It seemed to have the shape of a human, but the movements of its limbs were very stiff, and its arms and legs did not seem to be able to bend. What puzzled Xiaohua the most was that this monster's entire body was covered in red fur. The fine fur covered the monster's entire body, and not a single bit of skin was exposed. Moreover, there was a layer of fine powdery substance on top of the red fur, and it faintly emitted a phosphorescent light. This body hair was so luxuriant that it actually completely covered the monster's face, and its appearance could not be seen clearly. Only a pair of eyes could be seen through the gaps of the fur. This is a human? Or a soul beast? Xiaohua thought inwardly, but his gaze once again fell on the monster's two enormous breasts. Those enormous breasts were no different from an ordinary girl's breasts, but they were much bigger. When Xiaohua saw this monster, the fire ape naturally also saw it. A heart-wrenching roar came from the fire ape's mouth, and it was asking for help. See, that monster also raised its head and roared, but its voice was not as loud as the fire ape's. However, Xiaohua could still hear that soft voice. As the monster's voice entered his ears, Xiaohua's mind slightly shook, and his vision became a little blurry. Good boy, Xiaohua was greatly alarmed, and he hurriedly used God's guidance. A strand of coolness flowed through his mind, and the thirst of his divine sense was somewhat alleviated, but his mind was still a little shaky. Xiaohua did not dare to be negligent, and he hurriedly released his soul strands to block the monster's attack. The soul strands vibrated freely, blocking the monster's attack. Looking at the fire ape again, the silhouette of the fire ape that had been sucked out earlier gradually returned to its original position, and its body that was tumbling in the air also stopped. If you still want to leave at this time? Even if this young master does not take your life, I will not let you go. Xiaohua sneered, and pointed his finger. A few words of incantation came out, and the brilliance of the sun-moon corona changed again. The sun-moon corona gradually shrunk, and the sun-moon corona flattened, turning into something similar to a Dao crown. Go, Xiaohua pointed his finger again, and a wave of magic power surged. With a so sound, the Dao crown landed on the fire ape's head. The fire ape was greatly alarmed, and its two claws grabbed the sides of the Dao crown, exerting all its strength to take it away from its head. Tight, the corner of Xiaohua's mouth rose into a slight smile. This sun-moon corona method was something that he obtained when he was refining it. At that time, he did not know what use it had, but today, he found out that it actually had such a miraculous use. Roar! A deafening roar came out from the fire ape's mouth. The pain on the fire ape's face was even more intense than before, and its entire body fell to the ground in midair. Its two claws rapidly scratched its head, and traces of blood seeped out. It was actually the fire ape's claws that had scratched it. However, that Dao crown seemed to have taken root on its head. No matter how it struggled, even if it used its head to hit the ground, that Dao crown did not move in the slightest. Boom! A light sound rang out, and a flame flashed above Xiaohua's head. It was as if the true fire within Xiaohua's body had uncontrollably erupted. Moreover, an incomparable impatience suddenly emerged from the bottom of his heart, and a kind of pressure that came from the inside out was about to explode. Xiaohua did not have time to deal with the fire ape. He raised his head to look again, and this time, he was truly stunned. Right next to the monster, hundreds and thousands of soul beasts suddenly appeared, and on the backs of these soul beasts stood soul warriors. Damn it, this fire ape is really a genius. Xiaohua could not help but praise in his heart. Previously, you were together with the incomparably powerful thunder beast in Flame Forest Swamp, and now you've come all the way to Million Miles Mountain, and even become friends with this monster and soul beasts. If this young master really killed you, it would be a waste of my talent. Xiaohua did not have the confidence to deal with this monster, and he did not want to fight against a soul warrior. His body quickly descended, and with a wave of his hand, the universe in the sleeve was unleashed, and in an instant, the fire ape was imprisoned. Under the double imprisonment of the sun-moon corona and the universe in the sleeve, the fire ape only had the strength to tear apart tigers and leopards, and the ability to control true fire. Now, like a dead animal, it was lifted up by Xiaohua. Xiaohua then took out a spirit pouch and threw the fire ape into it. After easily dealing with the fire ape, Xiaohua glanced at the monster that was still some distance away from him. That monster's limbs were stiff, and it flew rather slowly. Xiaohua might not be able to fight against this monster's strange ability, but it seemed that escaping from the monster and the soul warrior's eyes was not a difficult matter. However, seeing the numerous soul warriors flying over from all over the mountains and plains, Xiaohua suddenly came to a realization, oh, not good. Where are my wife and the others? Thinking of this, Xiaohua did not dare to be negligent, and released his divine sense. Who would have thought that just as Xiaohua released his divine sense, a feeling of being thrown into an oven immediately came over from his divine sense. The surroundings seemed to be filled with waves of fire, and the indescribable fire was burning. The needles forced Xiaohua to have no choice but to withdraw his divine sense. However, his Buddhist sense, which had always been useful, was also forced to withdraw by the fire. Moreover, his Buddhist sense was not as good as his divine sense, and there was actually a burning sensation. What is this monster? Xiaohua was stunned. He knew that the Million Meng Mountains were mysterious, and that it was a place that Taoist cultivators did not dare to enter. However, he still did not expect that even though they were not even in the depths of the Million Meng Mountains, and were still in the Kai family's ancestral shrine, with his strength comparable to a nascent soul cultivator, he was unable to deal with a monster that he had not even seen before. This won't do. Even if my cultivation is damaged, I still have to find my wife and the others' whereabouts. Xiaohua was very anxious. His figure rose into the sky, and he released his divine sense again. Chapter 28:44. It was really like a naked man jumping into a lake of fire. Ever since Xiaohua started cultivating, he had suffered a lot. Lightning tribulation, body sculpting, bone tempering, 10,000 years of solitude, etc. However, it seemed that he could not avoid those sufferings. He was forced to face them. But this time was different. He could have retracted his divine sense. Perhaps everything would be fine. Perhaps he could have escaped this hellish suffering. However, Xiaohua did not dare to retract his divine sense. He understood that with his poor sense of direction, he would lose track of Fairy Hong Xia and the others as soon as he flew up. He could only go further and further away, and he would never be able to find them. Xiaohua could only rely on his divine sense. Ordinary people would not be able to understand the feeling of falling into a lake of fire. Even if their hands touched the flames, they would be burned. How could ordinary people reach their hands into the flame again? Although it was possible to pull chestnuts out of the fire, the process was extremely short. How could it be compared to Xiaohua's torment of jumping into the fire? That deep pain would occasionally pierce his divine sense. It was as if thousands of sharp needles were constantly attacking Xiaohua. Roar! Xiaohua roared, as if he wanted to roar out the pain. He did not dare to stay in the air for long. Lightning flickered around his body as he flew towards the monster. Rumble! Xiaohua's hands danced in the air as if he had gone crazy. The dark clouds in the sky surged rapidly, gradually accumulating. Dozens of lightning bolts struck down like sharp swords. All the lightning bolts had only one target, and that was the flying monster. Hiss! The monster saw the change in the sky and stopped in midair. It looked at the sky with great astonishment, then looked at Xiaohua. When the lightning struck, the monster's body immediately landed on top of a hill. Strangely, the hillside was the same as the other places. Because of the changes in Meng Mountains, there was no vegetation growing on it. It looked like it was filled with rocks and dust. However, when the monster's feet stepped on the hillside, an indescribable yellow color appeared under the monster's feet and rapidly spread across the entire hillside. Cracks quickly appeared on the hard boulders, and after a lot of cracks, they turned into powder. It was as if the monster had absorbed the last bit of moisture on the hillside. Hiss! Xiaohua clearly saw this strange scene and couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. He was immediately stunned, as if he had thought of something. Hitorigami. This is a drought demon. Xiaohua suddenly cried out in shock. Once the drought demon appears, the land will be dyed red for thousands of miles. Damn it, could this drought demon be the cause of the abnormal changes in Meng Mountains? No, that's not right. The drought demon was born because of the change in the spiritual chi of heaven and earth. Rumble, Xiaohua's cry was really effective. The pain in his divine sense actually lessened a little. Xiaohua naturally didn't dare to be negligent. His body turned into a bolt of lightning and rapidly flew toward a place, wanting to get away from this drought demon. Hiss hiss, the place where the lightning fell was precisely the standing drought demon. The threads of lightning, the lightning, and the flickering lightning net all fell. However, the drought demon raised both of its hands slightly, as if it was raising fire to burn the sky. Countless lightning bolts fell on its body, causing it to fall to the ground. However, when the drought demon stood up very tenaciously, Xiaohua discovered that these heavenly lightning actually only knocked down some red hair and didn't hurt the drought demon in the slightest. Isn't this a little too powerful? Xiaohua's eyeballs were about to fall out. Although he knew that the drought demon had a head of copper and arms of iron, and that its entire body was hard, but he didn't expect it to be this hard. Wu Hanba let out a rare cry. Xiaohua's entire body made a whoosh sound, as if it was about to explode. A splitting sensation emerged from his skull. Furthermore, that divine sense that was originally already covered in burns was actually cleaved apart by a kind of sharpness that was like a fiery sword. Motherfucker, how long has it been? My divine sense was already injured by the drought demon. Xiaohua smiled bitterly. He still stubbornly released his divine sense, continuing to sweep towards the distance. At this moment, the previously distant soul beasts were also flying closer. These soul beasts' bodies had some faint green brilliance. These green brilliances intertwined with each other, covering half the sky. Xiaohua's divine sense swept across some of these green brilliances, and a cool feeling entered his body. It was very pleasant. However, this feeling only lasted for a moment before the green brilliance began to corrode Xiaohua's divine sense, burning even more fiercely than the fire. Damn it! Xiaohua cursed angrily. He didn't want to get caught up in a fight with these soul warriors. His figure slightly turned, and he flew towards the side of the soul warriors. Unexpectedly, when they saw Xiaohua fly away, those soul warriors acted as if they didn't know. They continued to chase in the direction they came from, which was the direction where the drought demon fell. Moreover, because the drought demon was now flying and chasing after Xiaohua, it even waved the soul weapon in its hand, causing a sky full of green brilliance to pounce towards the drought demon. Oh, I understand now. Xiaohua suddenly realized, these millions of Meng Mountain soul cultivators are here to kill the drought demon. They're not here to help the drought demon save the fire ape. However, soon after, Xiaohua was stunned. But how can these soul cultivators kill the drought demon? But at this moment, Xiaohua's divine sense seemed to have discovered something. His face changed greatly, and a surge of anger involuntarily rose from the bottom of his heart. His divine sense retracted in a sorry state, and the lightning around his body flickered as he flew into the distance. It was actually the imperial lightning transformation that Xiaohua rarely used. Rumble, Xiaohua wasn't the only one flying. The dark clouds and lightning that had gathered in the sky earlier were also surging with Xiaohua into the distance. It seemed like Xiaohua's anger was soaring to the heavens. And the drought demon that was chasing after Xiaohua was also chasing after him. Because the drought demon had changed direction, it ran into the soul warriors. The green brilliance that blotted out the sky and covered the earth was like a gigantic tentacle that grabbed at the drought demon. Hiss, the drought demon's eyes that were covered by its red hair revealed a look of anger. It stretched out its hand and grabbed at the air a few times. A scorching heat comparable to the hand of a nascent soul cultivator shot up into the air. Hiss, the green brilliance of the drought demon melted in an instant, as if the green brilliance was being washed away by a flood. Roar, the dozen or so soul warriors that were closest to the drought demon waved the soul weapons in their hands. The soul beasts under their feet also spat out a green brilliance, and an obscure wave of energy enveloped the drought demon. Huff, seemingly hit by the soul warriors, the drought demon shook its head slightly and opened its mouth to roar at the soul warriors. Gee woo woo. Seeing this, the soul warriors were overjoyed. They roared to each other and urged their soul beasts to gather even more soul warriors to attack. And the soul incantations in their mouths were rapidly recited, wanting to launch a fatal attack on the drought demon. Seeing so many soul warriors blocking its way, and even more so, becoming more and more difficult to deal with like flies, the drought demon lost its last bit of patience. Looking at Xiaohua's already disappearing figure, it opened its mouth to roar again and stretched out its hand to grab. Bang bang bang, a series of explosions rang out. Several soul warriors that were in the middle of reciting soul incantations and urging their soul beasts to attack the drought demon inexplicably exploded. All of their flesh and blood scattered down like powder. And the soul beasts they were riding also fell from the sky. The remaining soul cultivators were somewhat scared. It seemed that after chasing for half a day, only now did they realize how powerful the drought demon was. Unfortunately, how could the attack of over 1,000 people be so easily stopped? The soul warriors behind these soul warriors continued to urge their soul beasts to chase after the drought demon. Soul incantations were also released. Pa 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 pa. A series of sounds rang out. It was like swatting flies. One after another, the soul warriors' flesh and blood exploded, and one after another, their soul beasts fell from the sky. Even the soul warriors who didn't notice before instinctively heard it. After all, this wasn't a fight with swordsmen. This was a one-sided massacre. These soul warriors were simply no match for the drought demon. Roar! The drought demon opened its mouth and laughed. All of the soul warriors were so scared that they urged their soul beasts to retreat. The scene was like a rising tide forcing itself to retreat. It was quite a spectacular sight. The drought demon ignored these soul warriors and continued to fly in the direction of Xiaohua. It seemed that the fire ape was very important to it. The remaining soul warriors stood in the sky for a moment. Seeing no trace of Yi Yu and Hou Yan, they looked at each other and urged their soul beasts to chase after the drought demon again. But this time, they only dared to stay far away. Activating the green defensive brilliance, no one dared to fly half a step. Where did Yi Yu and Hou Yan go? When the two of them were killing the drought demon, they naturally commanded the soul warriors to attack. However, the drought demon didn't want to fight them and they couldn't kill it. Originally, they chased after the drought demon to see if they could find any opportunities. The direction the drought demon went was naturally where the fire ape was, and this place wasn't far from the mountain peak where Xiao Mao put down Xia Qi and the two blue witch feathers. Hundreds or even thousands of soul beasts flew past. Xia Qi might not have known, but Qin Wuyu already knew. The two soul beasts didn't have any intelligence. They just flapped their wings and flew into the air, leaving Xia Qi jumping and shouting on the mountain peak. Yi Yu and Hou Yan were both wise people. After seeing the power of the drought demon, they knew that this trip was a failure. However, Hou Yan couldn't just turn back. He sent his subordinates back and continued to mobilize the other soul warriors while continuing to chase after the drought demon. Yi Yu, on the other hand, had already achieved his goal. He wasn't afraid to follow behind Hou Yan. While they were quietly discussing how to deal with the drought demon, the blue witch feathers had already flown close to them. At first, Yi Yu didn't care. The blue witch feathers were just ordinary soul beasts in the millions of Meng mountains. Who knew where these two soul beasts came from? But 7 was different. He thought about it for a while and figured it out. He knew that Xiao Mao had saved the soul beast in the Bai and stronghold. Although he didn't know that Xiao Mao had brought 2 soul beasts with him, how could 2 soul beasts suddenly appear in such a barren place? 7 hurriedly reported this to Yi Yu. Yi Yu was a calculative person. Once he was reminded, he immediately understood. He was overjoyed and asked for help from Hou Yan. Chapter 28:45. Hou Yan, who was still troubled, frowned even more when he heard this. In fact, he really didn't want to get involved in the matters of Shibai stronghold, especially such a sensitive matter. Although he agreed to help because he wanted something, there was still a sense of evasiveness in his bones. He didn't believe that in such a big Meng Mountains, he would really run into Xiao Mao this time. However, things were often so coincidental. When they really ran into each other, Ho Yen couldn't refuse anymore. He could only send his disciples to continue chasing Hanba, while he led over 100 spirit warriors and followed Yi Yu's 10 trusted subordinates to change direction. After all, the green witch feather was just an ordinary soul beast. How could it be as psychic as a soul beast commanded by a spirit warrior? After circling around, they slowly returned to the mountain peak where Chia Chi was. Chia Chi obviously didn't know the origin of these people. When it saw so many spirit warriors coming, it quickly stood up and bowed. However, no matter how Yi Yu and Ho Yen asked, Chia Chi didn't reveal Xiao Mao's whereabouts. Ho Yen was helpless and didn't say much, but how could Yi Yu let it go? He only nodded slightly, and Chi immediately walked out and cut off one of Chia Chi's arms, letting the blood flow out like a fountain. When Chia Chi saw Xiao Mao before, it had already fainted from hunger. Now that it was severely injured, it couldn't stand and fell to the ground. Its blood soaked the dried mountain rocks. Seeing that Chia Chi still refused to speak, Chi summoned his flying sword and sliced off the flesh on Chia Chi's other arm piece by piece. Chia Chi, who had gritted his teeth and remained silent, couldn't help but cry out in pain. His voice was so shrill that even the 2 green witch feathers cried out in shock in midair. Chia Chi's last arm was almost cut into bones, but Chi still didn't ask why. Under Chi's torture, Chia Chi only had 1 breath left to struggle. Chi didn't dare to casually kill Chia Chi without Yi Yu's orders. Even Ho Yen, who had never regarded the lives of the Aborigines as lives, frowned when he saw such cruel means. Ahem. Ho Yen coughed and said unhappily, Fu Man, although this Aborigine is a lowly person, he is still a citizen of Meng Mountain. It's fine if you killed him, but to torture him in front of your little brother, isn't that inappropriate? Night Rain was naturally angry. He didn't expect this native to be so stubborn. This native showed him the loyalty of the natives to the descendants of Shibai. Hearing Ho Yan's words, he said faintly, Brother Ho Yan, this is the internal affair of our Shibai village. The untouchables here are my people. I am the Fu Man of the Shibai stronghold. There is no reason why I can't deal with this lowly commoner, right? If that's the case, Fu Man will take care of the internal affairs here. Ho Yen waved his hand, and the soul beast landed. Ho Yen pretended to leave. Hey, brother. You didn't expect that Ho Yen was already regretting his decision. He hastily shouted, but before he could finish his sentence, a strong wave of energy appeared in the sky. Then, a light flashed in the sky. It was as if a hurricane had blown past. 3 figures appeared from the light and flew into the distance. Yi Yu was shocked at first, but when he saw them clearly, he was wild with joy. Yes, of the 3 people who appeared, Xiao Mao, whom he wanted to kill the most, was among them. Xiao Hua, whom he feared the most, wasn't here. Wasn't this what he wanted? Ho Yen. Yi Yu shouted recklessly, you and I have already agreed that the 3 of them have been sent here by the Huda goddess. Look carefully. That young cultivator is my enemy. You only need to kill him today, and everything I promised you before will still count. Ho Yen was also shocked. He didn't know how these 3 people appeared here. When he heard Yi Yu's words, he was also moved. However, he was still cautious and said, it's just a few foundation establishment cultivators, why do you need to worry about them? How about this, I'll help you stall these 2 foundation establishment cultivators. As for that, you can deal with it yourself. Okay, I'll do as brother says. When Yi Yu heard this, he didn't say anything else. His soul beast roared in the air and rushed towards Xiao Mao. Several of Yi Yu's confidants also urged their soul beasts to chase after Xiao Mao. Ho Yen wasn't in a hurry. He looked coldly at them and waved his hand. A soul warrior came forward and gave a few orders. The 100 soul warriors shouted a few times and waved their soul armaments. Gradually, a green light appeared and rushed towards Li Zongbao and Fairy Hongxia. Ho Yen reached out his hand and a snow-white bone staff appeared in his hand. The soul beast under his feet also flew up. Ga, the two blue shaman feathers didn't know what was going on. They flapped their wings and flew into the air to catch up with the other soul beasts. Although none of the soul beasts were blue shaman feathers, the two blue shaman feathers seemed to be very close to the other soul beasts. From time to time, they would soar up and play with the other soul beasts. The green light also wrapped around the blue shaman feathers. In the blink of an eye, the entire mountain was empty except for Chia Weeping. Chia Weeping struggled painfully to get up. Almost immediately, he fell to his knees and stared at the sky. He stared at the direction where the others were going and saw Xiao Mao's tall figure. Xiao Mao and the others were just as surprised. They were originally together with Xiao Hua, so their speed was roughly the same. However, just as they were about to be teleported away, Xiao Hua's figure suddenly sped up again. He actually surpassed them by more than 30 meters, disappearing into the space ahead of them. It was truly impossible for them to catch up. However, when Xiao Mao and the others reappeared in midair, they found themselves in the millions of Meng Mountains. Sure enough, Xiao Hua was separated from them. Of course, when they realized that this was where Xiao Hua was before, they heard the cries of soul beasts behind them. With a sweep of their wills, they knew that Yi Yu was here. Truly, enemies are bound to meet. Li Zongbao sneered. With a clap of his hand, the immortal slaughtering whip appeared in his hand. Fairy Hongxia was even calmer. She opened her mouth and the phoenix token flew out and landed in her hand. Seeing the two of them take out their magical treasures, Xiao Mao did not dare to be negligent. With a clap of his hand, the broken golden arrow called the sun-shooting arrow was taken out from his storage bag. Yi Yu. Seeing Yi Yu controlling his soul beast to fly over, Li Zongbao said coldly, "You really don't give up on your evil intentions. I should have killed you before we reached the Meng Mountains." Ha ha ha, Li Zongbao, I know that your name is Li Zongbao. I already knew that day at Drifting Cloud Lake. I also knew it during the Battle of the Sword Catacomb. Yi Yu laughed loudly. You, a late-stage Foundation establishment cultivator, want to kill me? You should take a piss and look at your own shadow. If it wasn't for the terrifying phoenix by your side that day, I would have already killed all of you. How could I have kept you alive until today? Yi Yu, set up a soul formation in the Sword Catacomb and help the sword cultivators of Huan Country to fight against the cultivators of the 3 cultivation countries. Fairy Hongxia waved her hand, causing the 5-colored phoenix medallion to emit a 5-colored brilliance around her. Then, she said coldly, "Today, there are also soul cultivators fighting against swordsmen in Meng Mountains. Are you a swordsman? Or a soul cultivator?" Fairy Hongxia's voice was loud. Obviously, she wanted Ho Yen behind Yi Yu to hear her. Sure enough, when he heard Yi Yu setting up a soul formation for sword cultivators, Ho Yen frowned and controlled his soul beast to stop in midair. Sword cultivators are the enemies of my Meng Mountains. Aren't cultivators the enemies of my Meng Mountains as well? Yi Yu was not flustered at all. He laughed loudly and said, "My ancestors were sword cultivators. I have never denied this. However, my ancestors gave their all for the sake of the sword domain. Yet, when the sword cultivators won, they did not care about my ancestors' contributions and killed all of them. If not for the fact that my ancestors were not in the sword domain and were able to escape, where would I be now? Therefore, I have long stopped seeing myself as a sword cultivator. The reason why I set up a soul formation in the Sword Catacomb to help LV Ruochang is because I have an agreement with her. The blood souls that activate the soul formation must be the disciples of the 4 sects who killed my ancestors. I am avenging my Yi clan. Although the swordsmen are fighting against the soul cultivators of Meng Mountains, I have always had a clear conscience and have always seen myself as a member of Meng Mountains. If you want to talk about this, you are looking down on the people of Meng Mountains." Hearing this, Ho Yen was enlightened. But then, he was displeased. If Yi Yu had said this first, he might not have cared. Just like what Yi Yu said, the life and death of cultivators had nothing to do with him. Moreover, with Yi Yu's status, Ho Yen knew that Yi Yu would never do anything that would harm Meng Mountains for the sake of swordsmen. However, it was Fairy Hong Xia who forced Yi Yu to say this. Yi Yu had the intention to hide this from Ho Yen, and this made Ho Yen feel uncomfortable. Hee, who knows what you are thinking? Fairy Hong Xia saw Ho Yan's expression and her heart tightened. She hurriedly said, everyone knows that a cunning rabbit has 3 burrows. Chapter 28:46. Well said, well said. Yi Yu was not angry at all. Instead, he clapped his hands and pointed at Xiao Mao behind Fairy Hong Xia. If we're talking about people who have been forgotten by their ancestors, this Xiao Mao behind you should be the first. He has the bloodline of the great god Shibai and even cultivates Daoist techniques. He's a Daoist and he doesn't even know his name. I'm afraid he's worse than me. As he spoke, Yi Yu turned to Ho Yen and said, little brother, I've already tolerated them for a long time. I was just afraid that you might have some grudges in your heart. Now that you've heard everything clearly, I haven't hidden anything from you. Yes, we'll do as you said. Ho Yen pointed out Yi Yu's identity. I'll kill these 2 Daoist cultivators. Okay, Yi Yu nodded. Opening her mouth, the small sword was about to fly out, but Yi Yu hesitated for a moment. Clapping her hands together, the beast-like soul armament came out again. Muttering an incantation, the soul armament began to glow with a dark green light. Agree? Xiao Mao and the others had a general understanding of the situation in the shaman village. When they heard Ho Yan's words, their expressions changed slightly. They understood Yi Yu's intention. Xiao Mao's eyes narrowed and anger appeared in his eyes. Needless to say, Yi Yu must have something to do with the death of Xiao Mao's parents. Otherwise, he would not have intercepted Xiao Mao and prevented him from going to Shibai village. When did swordsmen learn to be so cunning? You actually took over a magpie's nest in Meng Mountain. Li Zongbao waved his hand and the immortal slaying whip emitted a yellow light. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth suddenly gathered. He said coldly, I hate such evil deeds the most. Eat my whip. Li Zongbao. I heard you're a famous junior cultivator in Meng country. You're known as the #1 cultivator below the golden core stage. Ho Yen stomped his foot and the spirit beast flew over and blocked Li Zongbao's path. He said calmly, I'm Ho Yen, a citizen of Meng Mountain's Huda village. I'm here to test you and see the power of the #1 cultivator below the golden core stage. Huda village? Seeing hundreds of soul beasts gradually encircling them, making it hard for them to escape, Fairy Hong Xia hurriedly said, Huda's stronghold has always been on good terms with Shibai stronghold, and the descendants of Shibai stronghold have not appeared in Meng Mountains for many years. Now that Xiao Mao is the descendant of great god Shibai, you people of Huda's stronghold should naturally be able to distinguish between the truth and the lies. This is the ancestral land of great god Shibai, why are you protecting others? If Elder Wu and Ji-Man find out about this, Ho Yen, do you think you can escape punishment? Ha ha ha. A mere foundation establishment cultivator, what qualifications do you have to discuss the internal affairs of Meng Mountains? Ho Yen naturally knew what Fairy Hong Xia was trying to do. He laughed, the 2 of you are my targets. If you obediently surrender or withdraw now, I can guarantee that I will not take your lives, bah. Li Zongbao lightly spat out a mouthful of thick phlegm, evil creature, no matter how dignified your words are, it cannot hide the evil in your heart. I believe that you also need the help of this bullshit Fu man in Huda stronghold, or else you would not do such a thing that has been forgotten by your ancestors. That's right. Xiao Mao flew out from behind Fairy Hong Xia, pointing his finger at Xia weeping on a distant hillside, and said with grief and indignation, to use such cruel means to deal with the people under your command, you people do not deserve to be the people of Meng Mountains. Immediately after, Xiao Mao mumbled a dozen words in the native language of Meng Mountains. When he spoke, even though Ho Yen and the others were prepared, their expressions still changed. Even the hundreds of soul warriors flying in the air showed hesitation on their faces. Brother Ho Yen. Yi Yu naturally did not allow Xiao Mao to say anything more. He waved his hand, signaling a few of his trusted subordinates to attack. At the same time, he said to Ho Yen, "If not now, then when?" "Good." Ho Yen stretched out the bone staff in his hand and ordered loudly, "My sons, these 2 Dao sect cultivators have broken into Meng Mountains. You all are under the orders of Hu, a great god, to destroy the enemy. Kill them." When the soul warriors heard that they did not attack Xiao Mao directly, they were all overjoyed. They all roared and urged their soul beasts. The dark green brilliance was like 2 huge fingers, pointing at Li Zongbao and Fairy Hongxia. Li Zongbao and Fairy Hongxia naturally did not dare to fly. The 2 of them looked at each other, nodded slightly, and urged their transcendence energy. Li Zongbao waved his immortal slaughtering whip, and a lifelike shadow of the whip streaked across the sky, meeting the dark green brilliance head-on. In the blink of an eye, the shadow of the whip fell into the dark green brilliance. At the moment of contact, the shadow of the whip suddenly scattered, turning into hundreds of thumb-sized whip shadows. Puff 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 puff, the immortal slaughtering whip destroyed more than half of the green brilliance that was pointing at Li Zongbao. There were even a few small green brilliants that rushed into the green brilliance and hit the soul warriors in front of them. The soul warriors were shocked. They waved the soul weapons in their hands, and the soul beasts under their feet also opened their mouths, emitting a green brilliance in an attempt to block the whip shadows. Pow pow pow, several more sounds were heard. The 4 or 5 whip shadows destroyed the green brilliance, and the whip shadows disappeared. But there were still 2 whip shadows that landed on the soul warriors. Following the screams of the 2 soul warriors, the skin of the soul warriors were torn open, and their flesh was badly mangled. They fell from the soul beasts. And the soul beasts also fell with the soul warriors. Seeing this, Ho Yen couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air, his face showing astonishment. It wasn't that he hadn't seen a foundation establishment cultivator of the Dao sect, and it wasn't that he hadn't fought with the Huan Kingdom's illusory sword. It wasn't that he hadn't thought of Li Zongbao's strength, but he didn't expect Li Zongbao to be so powerful that he could even kill a soul warrior that ordinary cultivators couldn't get close to. Looking at Fairy Hongxia, it was even more beyond his expectations. The 5-colored phoenix token in Fairy Hongxia's hands looked very beautiful. She gently waved it, and a 5-colored light suddenly appeared, piercing into the dark green brilliance. In an instant, the brilliance was swept away. Although the multicolored light couldn't kill a soul warrior, it was enough to scare the soul beasts under the soul warriors into retreating several meters. This is troublesome. No wonder Yi Yu came to ask for help. Ho Yen thought to himself. After a slight hesitation, he waved his bone staff, and a faint green light appeared on his face. His mouth also muttered an incantation, and as Ho Yen chanted the witchcraft incantation, a faint layer of black gas appeared near him. At the same time, the soul warriors that Li Zongbao and Fairy Hongxia had repelled also raised their soul weapons. Their mouths also muttered the witchcraft incantation, and strands of black gas gradually appeared in the green light that connected them. Not good. Seeing such a strange situation, Fairy Hongxia's heart was alarmed, and she hurriedly shouted, "Senior brother, junior brother Xiao, let's run." "Hee, you've already come here, still want to leave?" At this time, Yi Yu pointed his finger, and the drop of blood on the tip of his finger had already disappeared into the single eye of the palace guarding beast. The palace guarding beast's entire body glowed with a green light, and its body gradually expanded. "Go!" Yi Yu did not even finish his sentence, and immediately jumped up from the body of the palace guarding beast, and landed on the back of the palace guarding beast. He slapped his hand on the palace guarding beast's forehead, and a green brilliance like the Milky Way poured down towards the 3 of them. "Humph!" Li Zongbao sneered, and the immortal slaughtering whip in his hand waved again. The golden brilliance of the immortal slaughtering whip was indeed powerful, and even Yi Yu's soul technique could not block it. With just one whip, the green brilliance was dispersed. However, when the green brilliance flashed, Xiao Mao disappeared from Li Zongbao and Fairy Hongxia's side. A strong sword chi in the green brilliance forced Xiao Mao to move more than 10 feet away from the 2 of them. "Junior brother Xiao, don't be hasty," Fairy Hongxia dispelled the green brilliance, and shouted, and was about to fly to Xiao Mao's side, when she heard a gloomy wind blowing in all directions, followed by countless ga sounds, like the wailing of ghosts and howling of wolves, that came from the left and right of them. Fairy Hongxia turned back to look, and saw that the area within 100 feet had been covered by a faint black aura. Within that black aura, countless ghost heads of various sizes were faintly discernible, bearing their fangs. Those chilling sounds were all coming from these ghost heads. Fairy Hongxia could not help but exclaim. Compared to female cultivators who were naturally frightened, Li Zongbao was considered to be better. However, looking at the ghost heads that were as small as fists and as big as rolling balls, and the bloody remains on top of them, an inexplicable chill rose from the bottom of his heart. Furthermore, these ghost heads seemed to have spiritual intelligence. Each of them opened their black mouths, and bit into the green brilliance around them, as if they were swallowing it, and the sounds of crunching could be heard continuously. Not good. Suddenly, a chill rose from his side, and Li Zongbao did not hesitate to fling the immortal slaughtering whip in his hand. Pa! With a soft sound, the shadow of the whip lashed out, and a faint human figure appeared under the shadow of the whip, and this human figure flickered a few times before disappearing again. Hiss! Li Zongbao suddenly realized that other than the ghost heads that he could see, there were ghosts in the air that could not be seen with the naked eye. Junior brother and sister, be careful. Li Zongbao hurriedly shouted, those ghost heads are just to attract attention, the formless ghosts are the real killers. Fairy Hongxia was really afraid of these ghosts, and hurriedly waved the phoenix token in her hand, and a 5-colored brilliance suddenly appeared. Countless screams came from around her, and one by one, the human-shaped ghosts turned into green smoke under the 5-colored brilliance, and disappeared. Although Ho Yen had been chanting witchcraft incantations, and the black aura on the bone staff was getting thicker, he did not manage to control the ghosts. Instead, his face was getting darker and darker. However, when he saw the power of Fairy Hongxia's phoenix token, he could not help but be stunned. He did not even bother to chant any witchcraft incantations, and only stared at Fairy Hongxia's phoenix token with a strange expression in his eyes. It seems. Ho Yen seemed to have thought of something, but he could not be sure, or perhaps he had only heard it by chance, and could not remember it clearly. This expression only lasted for a moment, and was immediately replaced by greed. The corner of his mouth slightly raised, and he waved his bone staff, and hundreds of Huda's stronghold spirit warriors moved. Chapter 2847. Woo-woo! Hundreds and thousands of ghost heads rushed out from the green light. Under each ghost head, there was a surge of black gas. They charged towards Li Zongbao and Red Dawn Fairy ferociously. Fight! Li Zongbao did not have any other tricks up his sleeve. He knew that all spells would be ineffective. He could only activate the celestial slaying whip to defend himself. Piak piak piak! One by one, the ghost heads were destroyed by the golden light of the celestial slaying whip and turned into streaks of black gas. This black gas then gathered with the black gas of the other ghost heads and surrounded Li Zongbao. Although Li Zongbao was brave, there were too many ghost heads. Inadvertently, a ghost head bypassed the celestial slaying whip and rushed towards Li Zongbao's legs. It easily bit on Li Zongbao's protective light. Caw, sounds came from the ghost head's mouth. After a few bites, Li Zongbao's protective light started to flicker. Li Zongbao hurriedly waved the celestial slaying whip and easily destroyed the ghost head. However, he was still a little nervous. He was not a golden core cultivator and could not have a protective golden light like Xiao Hua. This protective golden light was naturally a defensive yellow talisman. Of course, as an outstanding disciple of the Utopia faction, Li Zongbao also had a defensive magic item on him. However, he did not think that this protective magic item would be able to stop the ghost heads from swallowing him. Moreover, the celestial slaying whip was still an unformed spiritual weapon. Xiao Hua had already said that it had to be nurtured properly until the weapon's spirit matured. Only then would it be of great use. However, since entering the Huan Kingdom, Li Zongbao had used the celestial slaying whip more than once. It was like a fetus in its mother's arms being disturbed time and time again. How could it be born in 10 months? At this moment, after using the celestial slaying whip a few times, a gust of counterforce was generated from the celestial slaying whip. It rushed straight into his meridians and blood vessels. This counterforce was different from the one from the celestial slaying whip. During the Battle of the Sword Catacomb, Li Zongbao's cultivation level and magic power were not enough to fully control the celestial slaying whip. The counterforce was mainly damaging Li Zongbao's meridians and dantian. At this moment, the damage caused by this shapeless spirit artifact was more towards one's bloodline and mind. An indescribable sense of irritation and bloodiness gradually arose in Li Zongbao's heart. Looking at Fairy Hongxia, she seemed to have lost her usual calmness. Although the phoenix token in her hand was waved from time to time, there was no pattern to it. It was as though she was dancing purely out of fear. They couldn't form a regular attack. Therefore, even though this five-colored light was very powerful and could block the ghostly heads and formless ghostly spirits better than the immortal slaughtering whip, the ghostly heads outside the light were gradually killed. However, even more ghostly heads and ghostly spirits were still pouncing on the light and devouring it. Furthermore, looking at how Fairy Hongxia's arm was moving slower and slower, it was obvious that her magical power was running out. Whiz, a long and thin cry rang out from about 100 feet away from Fairy Hongxia. The palace-guarding beast under Yi Yu raised its slender neck and its body glowed with a green light. The green light then gathered in front of the palace-guarding beast's chest. Following that, the palace-guarding beast spat out a half-chi long green soul sword from its mouth and flew towards Xiao Mao, who was holding the shooting sun arrows in his hands. Go! Xiao Mao had been channeling his magical power all this while. Although he had not fully accumulated his power, the soul sword was already flying towards him. He did not dare to be careless. A golden light shot out and the shooting sun arrow flew towards the green soul sword. Woo! The shooting sun arrow disappeared in a flash and reappeared in front of the soul sword. The tip of the arrow seemed to have boundless strength, as though it could split the air in half. But what was extremely strange was that the soul sword at the tip of the arrow did not seem to be there at all. It passed through the shooting sun arrow and continued flying towards Xiao Mao. Furthermore, after passing through the shooting sun arrow, the speed of the soul sword suddenly increased. In the blink of an eye, it was less than 5 zhang away from Xiao Mao's forehead. Oh no! Xiao Mao saw that the shooting sun arrow that he had been accumulating power for a long time had missed its target. His heart turned pale with fright. An inescapable sense of control emerged from the soul sword and covered his forehead. A feeling of being unable to escape arose spontaneously. Damn it, this Mang Mountain spirit art, is too strange. Xiao Mao smiled bitterly. He knew that he could no longer escape. Therefore, he decided not to evade. He channeled the shooting sun arrow and flew towards Yi Yu without hesitation. He wanted to perish together with her. The sound of a beast's cry could be heard. Suddenly, a huge green shadow descended from the sky and blocked in front of Xiao Mao. It was the huge green witch feather. Yes, the green witch feather was not sentient. It had been playing with many spirit beasts. But when it saw that Xiao Mao was in danger, how could the green witch feather not give up its life? However, this soul sword was not an ordinary flying sword. Although the green witch feather's body was huge, the soul sword flew past the green witch feather and easily shattered its soul. The green witch feather only stopped flapping its wings for a moment and fell straight down from the sky. And it was obvious that the green witch feather's soul was too weak. After the soul sword was destroyed, it did not dim much. It only paused for a moment before thrusting towards Xiao Mao again. In the blink of an eye, it was less than half a foot away from Xiao Mao's forehead. Just as the soul sword struck down the blue sorcerer feather, the shooting sun arrow arrived in front of Yi Yu. Yi Yu was shocked when he saw the shooting sun arrow emitting a powerful ripple of mana and an indescribable, terrifying aura of death. He quickly opened his mouth and threw out his dagger. With a crack, the dagger and the shooting sun arrow were both deflected. Xiao Mao's shooting sun arrow, a foundation establishment cultivator, was actually on par with Yi Yu's dagger, a mirage sword cultivator. Pft, pft, pft. Even though the shooting sun arrow was deflected, it did not slow down. Several spirit beasts next to Yi Yu were unable to dodge in time and were all pierced by the shooting sun arrow. They did not even have time to scream before they fell from the sky. The spirit warriors were also heavily injured. Damn it. Yi Yu's heart ached. These soul warriors' cultivation levels were about the same as those at the early stage of the foundation establishment and the peak of the aura refining stage, but they were loyal. It wasn't easy for him to train a few of them in the Shibai village. Kill, Yi Yu roared in his mind. The spirit beast under his feet swung its tail and the soul sword pierced Xiao Mao's forehead. Gah, the other green witch feather cried out. It was a bit confused as it watched its mother fall from the sky. Then it looked at Xiao Mao, then at the corpse of the older green witch feather, and quickly fell down. With a boom, the corpse of the green witch feather fell to the ground. There was a large cloud of dust, but in the battle, no one saw it. Little green witch feather fell down and let out a few ga-ga sounds. Using its beak, it saw that its mother was ignoring it. It was a bit helpless. Then it turned its head to look at Xiao Mao. Then it flew to a distant mountain peak. There, Chia Chi was kneeling in a pool of blood and looking at Xiao Mao with great sincerity. Chia Chi's mouth was still muttering, but no one knew if he was praying or doing something else. Those trembling legs, those arms that had already turned into white bones, he didn't know what kind of power was supporting him bitterly. Chia Chi's eyes were fixed on the soul sword piercing Xiao Mao's forehead. His heart was already in a knot. Needless to say, Xiao Mao's life was what Chia Chi was most concerned about. It had long surpassed his own life. The soul sword was like a bolt of green lightning that instantly pierced Xiao Mao's forehead. The moment the soul sword entered his body, a trace of sorrow flashed through Xiao Mao's eyes. The desire to control life and death had never been so strong. The desire to control power had never been so strong. Perhaps only in the face of death, in the face of complete despair, could one's most primitive desire be aroused. Facing Xiao Mao, a smile appeared on Yi Yu's face. Cultivators had no special ability to resist the soul sword. Unless they were golden core or nascent soul cultivators, or their own heavenly talisman patterns could block it. As for foundation establishment cultivators, only death awaited them. Who knew that when the soul sword entered Xiao Mao's forehead, a cluster of green light bloomed from the spot where the soul sword entered. It was like a blooming morning glory. On the petals of the soul sword, many small green seal runes swam out. The change in Xiao Mao's forehead stunned Yi Yu. Chapter 28:48. As he spoke, Yi Yu's sword flashed and a dragon-shaped sword appeared from his body. Gusts of wind blew and countless amounts of heaven and earth spiritual chi rushed towards Yi Yu's dragon-shaped sword. Roar as the orange-yellow sword light soared into the sky from Yi Yu's body. An extremely complete dragon-shaped sword intent flashed within the sword light. An enormous and indescribable aura spread out from the dragon-shaped sword, enveloping an area of several dozen meters around it. The dragon-shaped sword was extremely ferocious and was very similar to Yi Yu's arrogant face. The entire dragon-shaped sword circled in the air and flew towards Xiao Mao. Under the dragon-shaped sword Xiao Mao's entire body was covered by the aura. The aura was like a tidal wave that completely drowned him. There was no room for him to breathe. Go! Xiao Mao knew that this was a critical moment. The dragonization manual in his meridians was activated and his true yuan rushed into the shooting sun arrow like a flood. Instantly, the tip of the shooting sun arrow emitted a strong golden light. The entire arrow flew into the air and destroyed the sword will. It then shot towards the head of the dragon-shaped sword will. When Xiao Mao sent Night Rain's soul sword back, Ho Yan's bone staff also slowly drew a line in the air. The appearance of the green seal text really gave Ho Yan a fright. However, when he saw the green seal text disappear, Ho Yan's eyes flashed with a pensive light. The bone staff in his hand just happened to draw an oval in the air. As Ho Yan lifted the bone staff, it was as if he was opening a lid. A thick black gas flew out from the oval. A mournful ghostly cry came from the black gas, causing Li Zongbao and Fairy Hongxia, who were surrounded by the ghostly heads, to tremble in fear. Woo, a thick black shadow rushed out from the black smoke. A ghost head that was several times larger than all the previous ghost heads opened its pitch-black mouth and revealed itself. Hiss hiss. The ghost head spun a few rounds in the air and laughed loudly. Ho Yan's face was a little pale, but he still chanted an incantation and pointed the bone staff in his hand. A green light fell on the ghost head, and the ghost head suddenly trembled as if it was extremely afraid of Ho Yan. It flew towards the direction the bone staff was pointing at. The targets of the ghost heads were naturally Li Zongbao and Fairy Hongxia. When the ghost heads charged into the group of ghost heads, they were not in a hurry to attack Fairy Hongxia's five-colored light. Instead, they opened their mouths wide and swallowed a dozen ghost heads nearby with crunching sounds. In an instant, the ghost heads were scared out of their wits. Evil creature. Ho Yan cursed and pointed the bone staff in his hand again. The ghost head quickly flew up and rushed towards Li Zongbao, who was not protected by the five-colored light. You're courting death. Li Zongbao's red flashed across his face again. Bang! The ghost head's head was head. However, the two ghost heads laughed at the same time and turned back into two complete ghost heads. They then bit at Li Zongbao from two different directions. Attack! Li Zongbao waved his hand again and destroyed the two ghost heads at the same time. Although part of the ghost heads were destroyed by the immortal slaying whip, the remaining part formed another 4 ghost heads and charged at Li Zongbao again. Sigh, what a pity about this spiritual artifact. Seeing that the immortal slaughtering whip could not kill the ghost heads, Li Zongbao sighed. He knew that a spiritual artifact would not be this powerful. It was just that his magic power was not enough and the spiritual artifact was not completed yet. However, he also knew that if he could not escape this calamity today, this spiritual artifact would not be completed in this lifetime. Where did Xiaohua go? Instantly, Li Zongbao thought of Xiaohua again. He can ignore my life, but does he dare to ignore Fairy Hongxia's life? Li Zongbao was in danger, and Xiao Mao was even worse. The shooting sun arrow was the dragon-shaped sword will that hit Night Rain. Although the golden light on the shooting sun arrow was destroyed by the dragon-shaped head, the dragon body was not damaged and still pierced towards Xiao Mao. Before the dragon-shaped sword will could get close, another green witch feather cried out from midair. The smaller green witch feather also flew down. Different from the older green witch feather, there was a person sitting on the smaller green witch feather. It was the dying Qiu weeping. Peng, with a muffled sound, the dragon-shaped sword will hit the green witch feather. There was no suspense at all. Although the green witch feather's body was big, the sword will that formed the dragon-shaped sword will cut the green witch feather into pieces and even cut through the corpse. As for Qiu weeping, the sword will cut through his body and he ended up like the green witch feather. The poor native Qiu weeping. Although he was saved by Xiao Mao from the mouth of another native, he still could not escape the fate of being killed by Meng Mountain's soul warriors. This devout native, until his death, his eyes were still filled with determination and conviction as he stared at Xiao Mao. He could not bear to look away for even a moment. The deaths of the green witch feather and Qiu weeping were not without effect. At least the dragon-shaped sword will was blocked. However, just as the dragon-shaped sword intent faded, a sharp sword beam rushed out from the dragon's body. It was none other than Night Rain's intrinsic sword. It had been hidden under the sword intent in an attempt to sneak an attack on Xiao Mao. The origin sword had just flown out and the corpses of the green witch feather and Qiu weeping had not yet landed when a faint, scarred divine will swept over from afar. This divine will was so weak that it was like an old man in his twilight years. It was weak, but from this divine will, there was a tenacity and persistence. However, when the divine will swept over the corpses of the green witch feather and Qiu weeping, this divine will was ignited in an instant. A feeling of extreme anger came from this divine will. At the same time, in the distant sky, there was a faint rumbling of thunder. Hurry, the terrifying phoenix is coming. Night Rain felt the divine will and immediately urged, this guy is almost as strong as a nascent soul cultivator. He's really strong. Oh. Nascent soul cultivator? Ho Yen was stunned and quickly asked. Fu Man didn't seem to have mentioned it before. As you controlled her life-bound dagger to attack Xiao Mao, she replied. He's almost as strong as a nascent soul cultivator, but he's still not a nascent soul cultivator. Do you really think he'll be able to escape the combined might of us soul warriors? What's the point of mentioning it now? Ho Yen was too lazy to argue with Night Rain. He waved the bone staff in his hand again, and the 8 ghost heads that had been destroyed by Li Zongbao roared and rushed towards Li Zongbao. Go! Xiao Mao saw the origin sword flying in front of him. He tried his best to dodge while making hand seals to control the sunshot arrow to attack Night Rain. It was a completely suicidal attack. Night Rain explained to Ho Yen while dodging the sunshot arrow. In a hurry, she didn't have the strength to kill Xiao Mao in an instant. Roar! The 8 ghost heads entangled Li Zongbao's slaughtering immortal whip. The other ghost heads found a gap and rushed in front of Li Zongbao. They opened their mouths to bite at Li Zongbao's protective magic treasure. The brilliance around Li Zongbao's body was extremely bright. It seemed that he was about to fall into a dangerous situation. Rumble. The sound of thunder streaked across the sky. It was even faster than the white horse galloping across the crevice. However, when the heavenly thunder was about 10 miles away, 2 streaks of green and red sword light shot towards Night Rain like shooting stars. Flying swords? At this time, Night Rain's dragon-shaped sword intent was already activated. The orange-yellow brilliance illuminated the sky as it roared and pierced towards Xiao Mao. Seeing the 2 flying swords flying towards him, he couldn't help but sneer. It was a kind of contempt coming from the corner of his mouth. Yes, what was the difference between using flying swords in front of a sword cultivator and displaying one's slight skill in front of an expert? Especially when the 2 flying swords were about 10 feet away from Night Rain, the green and red sword rays suddenly bloomed. The 2 sword rays, one on the left and one on the right, actually formed a heart shape in the air. The heart shape became increasingly elongated and actually turned into the shape of a sword. Night Rain laughed even more. He had never seen a sword intent that was shaped like a sword before. However, the heart sword was filled with anger and hatred. An indescribable fear emerged from the bottom of his heart. Yes, this was the killing intent in Xiao Hua's heart towards Night Rain. It was born when he saw Chia Qi being killed by Night Rain. Although Xiao Hua risked his spirit sense to search for Fairy Hong Xia and the rest, if he saw Fairy Hong Xia injured by Night Rain, the killing intent in his heart might not be so deep. Even if he saw Xiao Mao being injured by Night Rain, he wouldn't be so angry. Because this kind of injury was caused by a battle of life and death. It was an injury caused by an enemy of the same level. Xiao Hua might not have any other thoughts. However, what he saw was Chia Qi, a native, who was practically unarmed and defenseless against Night Rain. Yet, he was brutally killed by Night Rain. This native didn't have any special feelings for Xiao Hua. However, when this native fainted from hunger, he was almost eaten by his companions. When this native was saved by Xiao Mao, he didn't mention anything about being eaten by his companions. Xiao Hua didn't think that this native didn't know the situation at that time. Furthermore, when he was welcoming Xiao Mao to Bai and Stronghold, he was incomparably sincere, almost treating Xiao Mao as his own sky. Xiao Hua didn't know the situation of Chia Qi's family, nor did he know if he had any children. However, when Xiao Mao asked Chia Qi to lead the way, the gratitude in Chia Qi's eyes was enough to move Xiao Hua. Looking at Chia Qi's shattered corpse and that white bone right arm, how could Xiao Hua not know that this native had been interrogated by Night Rain? Of course, Xiao Hua didn't know how this native answered. However, if this native was forced to reveal Xiao Mao's whereabouts, would he have suffered such heavy injuries? Besides, how could Chia Qi know the whereabouts of Xiao Mao and the rest? Although Xiao Hua only saw the scene after Chia Qi's death, he saw a lot. He saw Qing Shiwuyu's loyalty, saw Chia Qi's sincerity, saw their determination to die for Xiao Mao. Although this native was a native, his heart was more honest and noble than a spirit warrior. If Xiao Hua didn't kill Night Rain, he wouldn't be able to face this native. Therefore, Night Rain must die. Xiao Hua must kill Night Rain. The anger of the heart sword was the anger in Xiao Hua's heart. Chapter 28:49. Yi Yu didn't know the origin of Xiao Hua's anger, nor did he care about the newly born heart sword. However, as soon as the heart sword was born, a sharp sword chi rushed out from the heart sword. A nearly invincible sword chi rushed out from the heart sword, not at all inferior to his own soaring dragon sword intent. The ridicule on Yi Yu's face froze. Whoosh! As soon as the heart sword was born, it met the incoming soaring dragon sword intent head-on. The two sword intents collided, and a wave of chi soared to the sky. After a loud bang, the orange sword chi and the green and red sword chi scattered like tiny snakes. Yi Yu's body couldn't be controlled under the power of the sword chi and involuntarily flew back. A dark red color appeared on his face, and his eyes were filled with indescribable astonishment. Transform. Transform into a sword. Yes, the sword chi of the heart sword defeated Yi Yu's disdain. This sword intent was something he was familiar with and desired. This. How is this possible? Yi Yu whispered, and hurriedly urged the somewhat chaotic sword chi in his body. This Xiao Hua is still several li away. He is a Dao sect cultivator. At this moment, a sharp pain came from his Naiwan palace, as if a sharp awl had pierced deep into his body. Hiss! Yi Yu just sensed it, and at the same time, he hurriedly urged a secret technique to block Xiao Hua's soul stab. Not waiting for him to counterattack, rumble. Countless lightning bolts flew close to the sky and fell down. Each lightning bolt was like a sharp sword, and it struck the hundreds and thousands of ghost heads. Those ghost heads turned into green smoke under the heavenly lightning, and slowly disappeared. Aoo, the ghost head that attacked Li Zongbao heard the thunder, and although it wasn't hit by the heavenly lightning, it still slightly trembled. Obviously, it was extremely afraid of the thunder. Seeing this, Ho Yen frowned and shouted a few times. He waved his bone staff, and a burst of black chi rushed into the ghost head. The ghost head seemed to have eaten a spirit herb, and suddenly swelled up. With a crunch, it bit on Li Zongbao's defensive brilliance, and the brilliance was instantly annihilated by more than half. Under Ho Yan's command, the soul cultivators that surrounded Li Zongbao and Fairy Hongxia immediately split into 80%, and flew towards Xiao Hua on their respective soul beasts. However, they didn't dare to use the ghost heads, and instead sent out beams of green light, to block Xiao Hua's soul formation technique, and to block Xiao Hua. Senior brother, don't panic. Fairy Hongxia was already somewhat weak, but she still managed to wave the Phoenix command to protect Li Zongbao. Don't worry about me. Li Zongbao said coldly. Protect Xiao Mao first. While speaking, Li Zongbao waved his slaughtering immortal whip, and destroyed a ghost head. Okay, Fairy Hongxia knew that Li Zongbao was in a critical situation, but he wasn't Night Rain's target. Xiao Mao was not only someone Night Rain wanted to kill, but also the descendant of Meng Mountain's Shibai. He was the hope of the people of Shibai village, and his safety couldn't be lost. But when Fairy Hongxia waved the Phoenix command, the green and red heart swords flew in front of Xiao Mao. The 3-foot-long heart swords were like a white jade pillar that supported the heavens, and firmly protected Xiao Mao. Darling Xiao is here. Fairy Hongxia's heart relaxed for no reason, and she looked into the distance. Xiao Hua's figure was already in sight. Facing the dozens of soul warriors and soul beasts, he didn't hesitate to take out the soul-absorbing bell. The toad, under the control of the soul strands, struck the soul-absorbing bell. With a loud clang, the dozens of soul warriors swayed slightly, and the green light that filled the sky suddenly flashed. But only for a moment, the green light seemed to go crazy. It rushed into the soul-absorbing bell, and with a ka-cha-cha sound, the soul-absorbing bell cracked open. Then, the toad began to tremble rapidly. Like sand being blown away by the wind, the toad turned into fine dust and fell to the ground. It was just like Night Rain's guardian beast was defeated. What's more, the strands of soul strands that Xiao Hua used to control the soul strands were suddenly hit by a strong force. All of the strands of soul strands couldn't help but dance with the strong force, and this dance was transmitted to the mysterious dark clouds. Damn it, the soul armaments I picked up are trash. Startled, Xiao Hua hurriedly pulled out his strands of soul strands and tried to absorb them into the dark clouds. Rumble, rumble, rumble. In just a moment, the dark clouds in Xiao Hua's mind seemed to have been hit by a heavy punch. It shook for a moment, and in front of Xiao Hua, the entire world was shaking. Trying to be clever but making a fool of myself. Xiao Hua resisted the nausea and discomfort with great difficulty. Without the slightest hesitation, he made a grabbing motion with his hand. Several more bolts of heavenly lightning fell, striking the several dozen spirit warriors. Threads of lightning flickered within the green light, slowly melting the green light. Roar! The dozens of soul warriors struggled to use their soul arrays to block the lightning. Roaring in unison, they waved their soul armaments, and at the same time, their soul beasts attacked in order to stop Xiao Hua. Humph! Xiao Hua snorted coldly. After looking at the dozens of soul warriors, he saw Night Rain controlling her flying sword. Furthermore, Night Rain himself flew out. While Xiao Hua was controlling his sword intent from afar, the sword energy around his body was also surging. Clang! The sound of a sword shook the heavens. Xiao Hua's figure slowly transformed into a sword and suddenly swung it in the air. Kacha! A crisp sound came from the collision between the sword and the soul arrays of the soul warriors. The green light of the soul arrays was cut in half by Xiao Hua's sword. Good! Seeing the soul arrays broken, Xiao Hua was overjoyed. Swordsmen really are the nemesis of soul warriors. Immediately after, Xiao Hua's figure gradually returned to normal. The sword light retracted, and like a cool breeze, he flashed past the dozens of frightened soul warriors and flew to the sky behind Night Rain. Woo! Now, Night Rain had already activated the dragon-shaped sword intent to attack Xiao Hua's sword. Then, with a wave of his hand, a cluster of sword light came out and chopped straight at Xiao Mao, who was about to activate the shooting sun arrows. Night Rain, you will pay with your life for Chia Qi. Xiao Hua sneered. With a clap of his hand, he took out the yin-yang sword gourd. The executioner's elemental light rushed out, and the green and red elemental light came straight down, twisting towards Night Rain's neck. The executioner's elemental light was Xiao Hua's sharpest move. Even something as strong as the executioner's elemental light would be defeated, let alone Night Rain. Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes and prepared to look at Ho Yen, who was controlling the ghost head to deal with Li Zongbao. However, just as the green and red sword lights were about to land, a flat disc that was several feet in size suddenly flew out from Night Rain's hand. This disc seemed to be made of metal, but it wasn't. It seemed to be made of wood, but it wasn't made of wood. There wasn't any light coming from it, and it didn't seem to be made of anything. But under the green and red elemental light, this thin disc had some specks of light on it. These specks of light weren't elemental light, but rather fluorescent. These specks of light were like starlight. These specks of light were moving in a mysterious way, and as the green and red elemental light came closer, the specks of light grew darker and darker. Clang! The executioner's elemental light was blocked by this strange disc. And the disc was spinning slightly, as if it wasn't damaged at all. What kind of soul armament is this? Xiao Hua was stunned. Xiao, Fairy Hongxia, who was standing next to Xiao Mao, hurriedly called out, "This is the 5-elemental astrolabe that was used to set up the 5-elemental sword array in the sword catacomb." Oh. So that's what it is. Xiao Hua understood. He had heard from Li Zongbao that after the 5-elemental sword array was broken by Fairy Hongxia, the 5-elemental astrolabe flew away with Liao Quebec. But somehow, it ended up in Night Rain's hand. Humph! Xiao Hua laughed coldly. Night Rain, even if you have the 5-elemental astrolabe, do you think you can escape from me? While speaking, Xiao Hua clapped his hands and a dragon roar resounded. The seal of overturning the sea was summoned as well. The yellow coiling dragon was activated by Xiao Hua's mana and flew straight into the air. The seal in its mouth also enveloped Night Rain from afar. The powerful sealing force came from the seal of overturning the sea. This. Night Rain stared dumbfoundedly at the heart sword in front of Xiao Mao. Then he looked at the sword gourd in the air, and finally at the seal of the overturning sea. He finally understood how terrifying Xiao Hua was. When had he ever seen a cultivator or swordsman who could control 3 magic treasures and swords at the same time? Hee, Xiao Hua laughed sinisterly. My wife, you go and help senior brother Li. I will chop off the head of this soul cultivator, swordsman. Yes, Fairy Hong Xia pursed her lips and smiled. She saw Xiao Hua toss out the dozens of sparkling fire talismans. She knew what Xiao Hua was going to do. Sure enough, when Fairy Hong Xia and Xiao Mao flew towards Li Zongbao, dozens of huge fireballs exploded in the night rain. Not only did the 5 elements astrolabe shake violently, but even the dragon-shaped sword was also shaken to the point that it dissipated. Night Rain, who was inside the sword gourd, was pushed left and right by the shockwave, as if he could not control his body. Bastard, I'll take your life. The smoke dissipated, and Yiyu rushed out of the air wave with a somewhat ashen face. His divine sense swept over, but he didn't see Xiao Hua's figure. Just as he felt that something was wrong, he heard Xiao Hua's sneer from above his head. It was precisely Xiao Hua who had used the demon realm's concealment technique to ambush him from behind. That huge wolf-tooth club carried a woo sound as it smashed towards Yiyu's back. Go! Night Rain panicked and hurriedly urged the 5 elemental astrolabe to block Xiao Hua's wolf-tooth club. Unfortunately, he miscalculated. He did not see Xiao Hua's right hand holding the wolf-tooth club. That hand was already open. Withdraw. The moment the wolf-tooth club touched the 5 elemental astrolabe, Xiao Hua used the heaven and earth sleeve technique. In an instant, he cut off the connection between Night Rain and the 5 elemental astrolabe. Then, before Night Rain could be surprised, the 5 elemental astrolabe mysteriously disappeared from the air. Kill! Xiao Hua's face showed a sinister smile. The yin-yang sword gourd in the air flashed slightly, and the soul-slaying vital light flew out again. Seeing that Night Rain had lost the 5 elemental astrolabe under Xiao Hua's sneak attack, and was about to fall under the soul-slaying vital light, an extremely hot and violent shockwave came from behind Xiao Hua and the others. Moreover, Xiao Mao exclaimed again. Chapter 2850. Xiao Hua had no time to kill Night Rain. He hurriedly looked back and saw that Hitorigami was already less than 2 li away from them. Although it was only 2 li away, most of the ghost heads around Xiao Hua's group had disappeared. The green light was also destroyed by Hitorigami's heat wave. The hundreds of spirit soldiers and soul beasts that were chasing them did not dare to approach Hitorigami. As for Ho Yen, who wanted to kill Li Zongbao and Fairy Hong Xia, his expression was extremely ugly. Although the ghost heads he controlled were still struggling in the heat wave, they seemed to be extremely afraid of Hitorigami. However, all of this was nothing. What puzzled Xiao Hua the most was that Hanba, who was originally chasing after him, was now looking at Xiao Mao. Xiao Mao seemed to be imprisoned by something. Although he was holding the shooting sun arrow in his hand, other than his earlier exclamation, he could not move at all. Even the dozen or so soul warriors that had been attacking Li Zongbao from all sides were now nothing more than blossoms of blood. Slowly, they fell to the ground. Clearly, this was done by Hitorigami, who was 2 li away. This is bad, Xiao Hua immediately understood. Hitorigami has taken a fancy to Xiao Mao. I'm afraid he's going to be used as a mistress. As he thought about it, Xiao Hua glared fiercely at Night Rain, who had used the opportunity while he was distracted to check on Xiao Mao, and who had managed to activate his sword light to escape into the distance. He pointed at the yin-yang sword gourd, and the spirit extermination primordial light from the sword gourd immediately flew out and surrounded Xiao Mao, trying to break free from the force that was imprisoning Xiao Mao. Who knew that when the green and red sword flashed, Xiao Mao was still unable to move? It was as if there was no imprisonment at all. Ouch! At this moment, Fairy Hong Xia screamed and could not help but hold her forehead. Seeing this, Xiaohua hurriedly shouted, "Don't release your soul sense." Just as he finished speaking, a burning feeling was born. Xiaohua looked at Hitorigami, who was flying very close to him, and helplessly put away the seal of turning the sea and yin-yang sword gourd, leaving only the soul-slaying dream and mountain splitter around him. What should I do? Xiaohua took out the wishful staff and was also unable to hit anything. Xiaohua panicked. This Hitorigami's methods were really strange. He had no idea how to deal with it. Just as Xiaohua was at his wit's end, Ho Yen, whose face was green and red, clenched his teeth. He looked at where Night Rain was fleeing in panic and pointed his bone staff at the ghost head. The ghost head let out a howl and quickly fled with Ho Yen. It didn't want to stay here any longer. Xiaohua slightly squinted his eyes and saw that Ho Yen had also run away, but he was also unable to take care of him. At this moment, something strange happened again. Xiao Mao's figure suddenly charged towards Hitorigami. His flying speed was extremely fast. How can this be? Xiaohua turned pale with fright. He immediately used the wind escape technique and chased after Xiao Mao. Without hesitation, he waved his hand and used the heaven and earth sleeve technique to take Xiao Mao into his space. But right at this time, Xiao Mao's figure suddenly vanished. Xiao Hua's universe in sleeve technique actually missed. This. Xiao Hua was slightly stunned. He didn't know whether he had taken Xiao Mao into his space or not. At this time, that incomparable heat suddenly surged. Xiao Hua's heart swelled, as if his whole body was about to explode. However, this feeling disappeared in a flash. His entire surroundings immediately became cool and cool again. Looking into the distance, Hitorigami, who had been approaching earlier, had also disappeared. At this time, even if Xiao Hua didn't look at his space, how could he not know that Xiao Mao must have been taken away by Hitorigami? However, Xiao Hua still cautiously looked into his space. There was no sign of Xiao Mao's figure. Xiao Lang, junior brother Xiao. Fairy Hong Xia and Li Zongbao's voices rang out at the same time. The two of them stared blankly at the scene that was abnormally lively just a moment ago. It was a matter of life and death. Now, it was abnormally quiet. There was no sign of a fourth person. They didn't know what to say. There, Xiao Hua opened his left hand slightly and quickly looked. He pointed in a direction and said, "Quickly chase. Let's go." Li Zongbao and Fairy Hong Xia naturally didn't know that Xiao Hua's transcendence vision had seen a streak of bright red in the distance. They looked at each other and both of them activated their transcendence energy and followed Xiao Hua in that direction. Xiao Hua kept his transcendence vision open, not daring to be distracted. He was afraid that he would accidentally lose track of Hitorigami. Li Zongbao and Fairy Hong Xia knew that Xiao Hua didn't have a sense of direction. As they flew forward with Xiao Hua, they paid attention to the direction. However, Xiao Hua's lightning escape technique was so fast. How could Li Zongbao and Fairy Hong Xia catch up to him? In just a moment, Xiao Hua's figure disappeared from their eyes. Li Zongbao and Fairy Hong Xia had no choice but to release their divine senses. Luckily, as Hitorigami's figure disappeared, the burning heat also disappeared. The two of them could still see Xiao Hua through their divine senses. They saw that Xiao Hua wasn't chasing in a straight line. Instead, he was moving left and right as if he was playing hide and seek with someone. Luckily, Xiao Hua's lightning escape technique was really impressive. He could still change directions in such a hurry. However, it was obvious that even if Li Zongbao and Fairy Hong Xia could catch up to Xiao Hua with their divine senses, with Xiao Hua's speed, he would sooner or later rush out of the range of their divine senses. Fairy Hong Xia smiled bitterly and turned to look at Li Zongbao. Although Li Zongbao's expression was calm, his eyes were obviously red. "Follow junior brother Xiao." Li Zongbao casually swung the immortal slaughtering whip in his hand. Now that Xiao Mao is in danger, junior brother Xiao can't not go and save him. With your phoenix token and my immortal slaughtering whip here, there shouldn't be any danger for now. Fairy Hong Xia knew that Li Zongbao's words were reasonable. However, she was still worried. Not to mention that she had seen so many ghostly heads earlier, which had frightened her. Even Hitorigami's ability to burn divine senses and separate Xiao Mao made her worried for Xiao Hua. Indeed, not long after, Xiao Hua escaped from their divine senses and they couldn't find any trace of him. Li Zongbao and Fairy Hongxia didn't dare to go in any other direction. They only chased in the direction where Xiao Hua disappeared. Xiao Hua naturally knew that Li Zongbao and Fairy Hongxia were in an awkward situation. However, he really couldn't have the best of both worlds. His divine senses were severely injured. Not only did he not dare to release them, but he also felt waves of discomfort coming from the Buddha's Saraira. He could only release his Buddhist senses. However, he couldn't find any trace of Hitorigami. At this moment, he could only use his Buddhist senses to search for traces of Fairy Hongxia and Li Zongbao. He could only use his Dharma eyes to track the faint bright red in the distance. Logically speaking, Xiao Hua's lightning evasion was already extremely fast. Previously, he should have been able to surpass Hitorigami by a lot. However, it was strange now. After chasing for a long time, he still couldn't get close to the bright red. It was as if Hitorigami didn't take Xiao Hua seriously at all. Moreover, the bright red in front of him was always vague and indistinct. It even hid from time to time. Xiao Hua didn't dare to be careless. How could he distinguish the direction? He only chased after the bright red light. After chasing for more than half a day, the surrounding scenery changed greatly. The original barren land gradually disappeared. Large patches of vegetation began to appear. Of course, these vegetation were also extremely withered and yellow. They were all on the verge of death. The mountain peaks became steeper. Between the mountains, there were more obvious ravines. The deep pits must be the pools and streams from before. Similarly, there were many millet stalks lying on the ground. Some were more than a foot tall, while others were only an inch long. These millet stalks didn't have any ears. They were no different from the withered and yellow vegetation nearby. If it was any other day, Xiao Hua might have scattered the millet stalks. However, his body was like a bolt of lightning as he whizzed past. He didn't have any intention to investigate. Even so, after Xiao Hua's body streaked across a ravine, he suddenly stopped. The lightning around him didn't stop. In fact, it suddenly expanded. He flew forward for more than 1,000 feet and arrived at another ravine. Immediately after, Xiao Hua's entire body was like a headless fly as he flew extremely quickly within a radius of 100 zhang. There were even a few times when Xiao Hua's body escaped into the ravine. However, after tossing and turning like this for the time it took to finish a meal, Xiao Hua finally stopped in midair. His eyes quickly spun around, as if he wanted to find something in this place. That's right, just a moment ago, an indistinct bright red flew to this place and suddenly disappeared. It disappeared without any warning. Xiao Hua had already searched this place for a long time. Within his Dharma eyes and Buddhist perception, there were no traces of it. There were no burning marks. It was as if Hanba had never come to this place. At this point, how could Xiao Hua not know that he had lost Hanba? Hanba had calmly escaped in front of his eyes. In fact, Xiao Hua had a faint feeling that the so-called bright red might be Hanba's plan to lure the tiger away from the mountain. But now, what could Xiao Hua say? He had been flying for a long time. Not only did he not catch up to Xiao Mao, Fairy Hongxia and Li Zongbao who were behind him had also disappeared. Xiao Hua looked up to the sky and shouted. He was really vexed. However, that voice reverberated in the distance. There were many echoes. Every echo seemed to be the mountains mocking Xiao Hua. Right, how could this young master forget? Suddenly, Xiao Hua thought of the fire ape in his spirit storage bag. Without hesitation, Xiao Hua patted his hand and took out the fire ape from his spirit storage bag. At this moment, the fire ape was wearing a Taoist crown on its head. It looked left and right in astonishment. Its expression was even more like a monkey wearing a crown. When the fire ape saw Xiao Hua, its eyes were completely red. Its face revealed its extreme viciousness. Flames appeared on its hands without hesitation and attacked Xiaohua. Humph, Xiaohua sneered. He pointed his finger and chanted an incantation. Roar, roar, roar. The sun and moon corona above the fire ape's head shone brightly and gradually tightened. An incomparable pain emerged from the fire ape's forehead. That pain was bone-piercing and heart-piercing. It directly pierced into the fire ape's soul. The fire ape screamed miserably and rolled on the ground, smashing rocks and other objects into pieces. Chapter 28:51. Looking at the fire ape's painful appearance, the anger in Xiaohua's heart lessened. He stopped and roared, "Where is the drought demon? Quickly bring me to find it." Xiaohua called out 3 times in a row, but the fire ape was still moaning on the ground. It didn't answer and didn't fly up. There was still an obvious untamed look in its eyes. "Since you don't want to speak, then you can wait for death." Xiaohua sneered and chanted the incantation again. Roar, the fire ape roared again. Its voice was already clearly hoarse. Even its rolling on the ground slowed down. "You still won't speak?" Xiaohua stopped the incantation and said indifferently. "Gigi," the fire ape rolled its eyes. It seemed to have compromised. It carefully climbed up from the ground, arched its claws and pointed in a direction in front. "Oh. Where is it?" Just as Xiaohua was about to raise his head, a sharp wind suddenly came from his lower body. A black shadow smashed towards Xiaohua's lower body faster than a stick. Damn it, Xiaohua was angry. He leaned his body slightly and dodged the black shadow with extreme agility. Moreover, he stretched out his hand and easily caught the black shadow. This black shadow was furry and somewhat prickly. It was the fire ape's tail. Xiaohua pulled his hand and the fire ape's several zhang tall body immediately fell down. Xiaohua's other hand slightly clenched and smashed towards the fire ape's lower back with all his strength. Boom, a loud sound was heard. A series of sounds came from the fire ape's body. Roar, it was even louder than the previous scream. The fire ape couldn't help but cry out. Boom boom boom, Xiaohua wasn't stingy. He raised his leg and stepped on the fire ape's thigh. His right hand continuously struck towards the fire ape's waist. Sparks flew out from the fire ape's fur. Moreover, the place where Xiaohua hit was twitching. It was obvious that the fire ape was in extreme pain. However, Xiaohua was firmly stepping on it. No matter how it struggled, it couldn't move. Roar, another loud cry. A stream of crimson-red blood flowed down from the fire ape's body. Evil creature, why aren't you leading the way? Seeing this, Xiaohua withdrew his fist and flew into the air as he cursed. G, the fire ape mumbled a few times. How could Xiaohua be impatient? He started chanting again. Awoo, the fire ape could not help but hold its head and wail again. However, this time, it was quick-witted again. It hurriedly flew up, stepped on flames, and flew away. Humph, Xiaohua coldly snorted. His mouth didn't stop as he chased after the fire ape. However, after flying for about 100 miles and arriving at a few mountain peaks, the fire ape stopped moving forward. It hung its arms pitifully and looked helpless. I still have to die. Xiaohua sneered and chanted another incantation, causing the fire ape to roll around in the valley for the time it took to drink a cup of tea. The fire ape was about to roll its eyes, but it still didn't fly up. Obviously, the fire ape also couldn't find the whereabouts of Hanba. Xiaohua was speechless. He fiercely kicked the fire ape and kept it into his spirit storage pouch. Then, he looked around. Under the fire ape's lead, he had already flown far away. He released his Buddhist perception and roughly looked around. Within 200 miles, there was no sign of Fairy Hongxia or Li Zongbao. Damn it, what is this? Xiaohua was angry. He raised his head and roared. Following Xiaohua's roar, countless heavenly lightning fell from the sky from his hands. Rumble. It was like rain falling down. Kacha. Tens of hundreds of thumb-sized heavenly lightning struck the mountain peaks around Xiaohua. Countless mountain rocks were smashed and rolled down the mountain. Countless dust flew up and covered the entire mountain peak. Even the countless withered trees and vegetation were ignited and turned into powder. They were blown up into the sky along with the dust. Xiaohua turned to look at the mess that he had created. Xiaohua slightly vented the anger in his heart. Biting his dry lips, Xiaohua turned around and was about to fly back to find Li Zongbao and Fairy Hongxia. At this moment, several beast cries sounded. A few ripples similar to divine perception swept over. Then, a clear voice sounded, "Where did this Dao sect cultivator come from? How dare you behave so atrociously in my Meng Mountains? Are you tired of living? Spirit warrior? Soul perception?" Hearing this voice, Xiaohua turned his head to look. Between the two mountains, a white-winged spirit beast similar to the one Ho Yen was riding was flying over. On top of it was a woman wearing strange clothes. She was waving a bone staff in her hand and looking at Xiaohua coldly. This woman had dark skin and was very skinny. Although her eyes were big, her sharp mouth and monkey cheeks made Xiaohua feel uncomfortable. "Of course it's me." When Xiaohua saw the spirit warrior, an inexplicable anger rose in his heart. He was too lazy to use his divine perception. With a wave of his hand, tens of heavenly lightning bolts appeared in the sky. With a rumbling sound, they came crashing down on the female spirit warrior. "You dare!" Seeing so many heavenly lightning bolts, the woman's face changed greatly. She hurriedly waved the bone staff in her hand. A black gas was emitted from the bone staff. Tens of fist-sized ghost heads rushed out and lined up above the woman's head. Clearly, they were trying to block the heavenly lightning bolts that were similar to Xiaohua's anger. Third sister. At this time, tens of similar spirit beasts appeared behind the woman. On top of these spirit beasts were tens of spirit warriors. When these spirit warriors saw the heavenly lightning above the woman's head, they all turned pale with fright. Without the slightest hesitation, they waved the bone staff in their hands. Hundreds of ghost heads appeared near the female spirit warrior and rushed up into the air. Rumble, 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 lightning flashed. In the instant that the 100 ghost heads appeared, they came crashing down. Under the tens of heavenly lightning bolts, the ghost heads didn't even have the slightest chance to struggle. In an instant, they disintegrated. However, the black smoke that came out of the ghost heads and the green light that came out of them were barely able to block the heavenly lightning. Hee, enemies really do meet on a narrow road. Xiaohua sneered, "Just now, a spirit warrior that fought me to the death left, and now you've sent over 10 more. This young master will send you all on your way." Thinking of this, Xiaohua didn't say anything else. He slapped his hand and the yin-yang sword gourd flew out. With a point of his finger, the green and red executioner's primordial light soared into the sky. It was aimed at the neck of the female spirit warrior who had already lost her soul. The executioner's primordial light was extremely fast and sharp. The faint black smoke and the thin green light couldn't block it at all. Although the female spirit warrior was extremely ugly, her slender neck had a string of small white bones. It was dark and somewhat alluring. But this allure was powerless under the executioner's primordial light. It could only show the deathly whiteness of her life. "Xiaohua, have mercy." Seeing that the female spirit warrior's head was about to roll down under the executioner's primordial light, an anxious and pleasantly surprised voice came from afar. "Ah?" Xiaohua was stunned. He hurriedly pointed his finger. With a "si" sound, the two executioners' primordial light stopped. It had just touched the female spirit warrior's skin. Traces of blood flowed down the female spirit warrior's pitch-black neck and dyed her pure white bones red. The female spirit warrior was already stunned. She didn't dare to move in the slightest. "You are..." Xiaohua raised his eyes to look. Behind the female spirit warrior, a similarly dressed woman flew out on a soul beast. But this woman's skin was white and her face was also pretty. Moreover, in Xiaohua's eyes, this face gave birth to a familiar feeling in his heart. But Xiao Hua blinked his eyes. He couldn't think of where he had seen this woman before. I am. A trace of joy flew out from the woman's face. But this joy disappeared in a flash. She said with a smile, "You'll have to guess who I am. But I know that you are Xiao Hua. Your name. I already knew it." This. Xiao Hua was really at a loss. "But shouldn't you first release this concubine's servant girl?" The woman said with a smile, although her mouth was a bit rude, "But it wasn't to the point where fellow Taoist Xiao would take her life as soon as you saw her, right?" Fellow Taoist Xiao? Xiao Hua was even more stunned. What kind of spirit warrior would call a cultivator fellow Taoist? Looking at this woman's increasingly familiar face, Xiao Hua couldn't think of where he had seen her before. Seeing the disappointment on this woman's face, Xiao Hua suddenly came to a realization. He hurriedly said, "Io? You're Zai. How are you a woman? Hee, you can still remember?" The woman laughed. But then she shook her head slightly. "Unfortunately, this concubine's name is Zimming. Not Zai. Zai is only this concubine's twin brother." Ha, so that's how it is. Xiao Hua suddenly realized. He clapped his hands and said, "I knew it. If it really was Zai, there's no way I wouldn't recognize him." While speaking, Xiao Hua pointed a finger. The death beam flew back into the yin-yang sword gourd. When the death beam left the woman's neck, she instantly collapsed on the soul beast. Her bones were soft and her muscles were numb. It was difficult for her to get up. In this world, not everyone could face life and death calmly. "Xiao Hong, why aren't you thanking young Master Xiao?" Zimming scolded the woman. The woman struggled to get up, but she couldn't. She could only whisper, "This servant thanks, don't." Xiao Hua hurriedly waved his hand and bowed, "This has nothing to do with you. It's all this Xiao's fault. I'm the one who should apologize." "Good," Zimming clapped his hands and said, "Young Master Xiao, no wonder Zai has been praising you since he came back from Sky Patrol City. It turns out that you're really as magnanimous and pure as he said. This kind of apology is easy to say, but it's extremely difficult to do. Sigh, don't mention it." Xiao Hua smiled bitterly and waved his hand. "It's clearly this Xiao's fault. How can it be this lady's fault? How can this kind of thing affect one's character?" Then, Xiao Hua looked at Zimming and hesitated for a moment before saying, "This Xiao always thought that Zai was a disciple of an aristocratic family in the Three Kingdoms of Cultivation. I really didn't expect him to be a citizen of Meng Mountain. How is he now?" Chapter 2852. "Yes, he's very good," Ziming said with a smile. "As soon as he came back, he excitedly talked to me about young Master Xiao. He said that the trip to Sky Patrol City was worth it. I didn't expect that there would be a dragon among men like young Master Xiao in the Dao sect." Ahem, Xiao Hua's face was a little red. He coughed twice and said, "Zai is also the only confidant I've met in my life. I came to Million Mountain Meng to see Zai, but I have some urgent matters to attend to. If Ziming leaves Zai's message, I'll go see him when I'm free." "Oh." Ziming only came to her senses now. Looking at the curious maidservants around her, she waved her hand. Most of these maidservants had smiles on their faces as they controlled their soul beasts to hide. Seeing that all the maidservants had left, Ziming smiled and said, "Young Master Xiao, I'm very curious. How did you come to Million Mountain Meng? If you don't have any special secrets, why don't you tell me? No matter what, I'm still a person of Meng Mountain. Who knows, I might be able to help you." "Oh." Xiao Hua frowned and hesitated. He and Ziyi had met by chance and had only met once. Although they could be considered close friends, it was not to the extent of entrusting their lives to each other. Although Ziming and Ziyi were twin siblings, they were not the same person after all. Besides, Ho Yan's soul beast was the same as Zi Ming and the others. Even the bone staff and the ghost head were the same. Who knew what kind of relationship Zi Ming had with Ho Yan? Seeing Xiao Hua hesitate, Zi Ming smiled and said, "I'm Zai's twin brother. Usually, our hearts are connected. Young Master Xiao doesn't need to be afraid." He, Xiao Hua shook his head slightly. "Zi Ming, you're not Zai. If Zai was here, I would naturally be honest with you. But you're Zi Ming. Although you're my twin brother, do you think I can explain it to you?" As expected. Zi Ming wasn't angry when she heard that. Instead, she smiled and said, "Zai said, TSK, young Master Xiao is really unique. Most people would avoid saying such offensive words, or they would say it in a roundabout way. Young Master Xiao, on the other hand, is so straightforward. You've really opened my eyes." This Xiao regards Zai as a close friend. It is precisely because of this kind of magnanimous heart and this kind of straightforward words that Zi Ming and Ziyi are so similar that this Xiao can't not speak to Zi Ming like this. If Zi Ming feels that this is inappropriate, I ask for Zi Ming's understanding. Xiao Hua didn't hold back and said straightforwardly. "You flatter me." Zi Ming pursed her lips and smiled. Young Master Xiao is someone my younger brother admires, so I naturally admire him. How about this, young master? Think about it and see if there's anything I can help you with. A fence and 3 poles. I have some people who can help with small matters. All right. Xiao Hua hesitated for a moment before telling him about Xiao Mao being kidnapped by Hanba. As for Ho Yan and Yi Yu, he didn't mention a single word. What? Hanba? Zi Ming was stunned when he heard this. This item has been extinct in Meng Mountains for many years. How is it possible? At this point, Zi Ming suddenly realized something and smiled apologetically. Young Master Xiao, it's not that I don't believe you. It's just that I've been busy with other things recently and haven't been in the shaman village. The appearance of Hanba is really too strange. I have to think about it. Also, don't worry, young master. I'll immediately pass down the order to immediately let the spirit warriors of my shaman village search for Hanba's whereabouts. Once they find it, they'll immediately inform young master. As he spoke, Zi Ming tapped the spirit beast under his feet with the bone staff in his hand. The spirit beast let out a "Gigi" sound as if it was summoning the maidservant who had just left. Then, Zi Ming raised his head and smiled at Xiao Hua. Looking at Zi Ming's grin, Xiao Hua's heart was slightly warmed. Zi Ming's smile was almost exactly the same as Zi Ye's. It immediately reminded him of that day in Sky Patrol City, when the two of them were singing loudly under the wind and snow. In the blink of an eye, nearly 10 years had passed. The sword battle was coming to an end, and this mysterious Zi Ye's face was also revealed. Alas, fate makes fools of people. I thought Ziyi was a disciple of a cultivation family. Although there's a difference in status, he's still a confidant. I didn't expect Ziyi to be a soul cultivator. But he and I. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua was suddenly shocked. Ziyi has already made it clear that a hero shouldn't ask about his origin. He already knows that I'm a cultivator of the Dao sect. From what I see now, Ziyi might be a person from the shaman village who's not inferior to Xiao Mao's background. He's much more honorable than me. He didn't care about my origin and bent over to befriend me. What else do I have to think about? Isn't this kind of friendship that doesn't ask about one's origin and origin much purer than those with ulterior motives? Thinking of this, Xiao Hua's lips curled into a smile. He also looked at Zi Ming, as if he also saw Zi Ming as Ziyi. Zi Ming blushed a little under Xiao Hua's gaze. He glanced down and whispered, "By the way, young Master Xiao, aren't you participating in the sword battle in Sky Patrol City? Why, did you suddenly come to Meng Mountains?" It's a long story. Xiao Hua understood and didn't hide it anymore. Just as he was about to speak, there was a burst of chirping and a group of maidservants flew back with smiles. Immediately after, Zi Ming's face became serious and he gave the order. Among the dozen or so servant girls, other than a few who were slightly older, the others were all sent out by Ziming. The girl who had almost been killed by Xiao Hua was also among them. When Ziming gave the order, he used the language of Meng Mountains, which was similar to what Xiao Mao had said earlier. When the maidservants heard this, their faces showed respect and they quickly left to carry out the order. After everyone was sent out, Ziming smiled and said, "Young Master Xiao, if you have time, why don't you go to a place with me? If there's news about Xiao Mao, it'll be convenient for me to inform you. Otherwise, Meng Mountains is so big. Although you have a message talisman, it won't be easy for you to find him." This. Xiao Hua hesitated and said, "Actually, Xiao Mao isn't the only one who came with me to Meng Mountains. There's also Li Zongbao from Utopia faction and Hongxia Fairy from Huanhua sect." I was going to say, "Hee." Ziming laughed and said, "Young master doesn't need to say anything. If you don't want to go with me, I won't force you." However, from what Zi said, young master seems to be an expert in alchemy. Although the place I'm going to has nothing to do with alchemy, there are still some connections. If young master can go, you might be able to gain something. So it's like that. Xiao Hua was a little surprised. He knew that Ziming meant well. But the problem was, Xiao Mao's life and death were uncertain. How could he go with Ziming with peace of mind? Ziming seemed to understand Xiao Hua's hesitation and said, "That Hanba is an ancient iron corpse. He has the bloodline of the Hembai and is very good at hiding. With young master's cultivation, I'm afraid it won't be easy to find him. Only us Meng Mountain soul warriors can use special soul techniques to find clues. Instead of searching for a needle in a haystack, why don't you let my subordinates go? Once there's news, it won't be too late for young master to go." Ancient iron corpse? Hembai bloodline? Xiao Hua was slightly surprised and thought, isn't Xiao Mao also of the Hembai bloodline? Right, wasn't that Hanba chasing after me? I'm afraid it wanted to find the fire ape. But when it saw Xiao Mao, it immediately abandoned the fire ape and took Xiao Mao away. If it had a strange killing intent towards Xiao Mao, it would have killed him just now. Then, it must have something to ask of Xiao Mao. Since that's the case, Xiao Mao's life might not be in danger. Of course, what Ziming said is very true. How am I going to find him? Even if I kill that fire ape, it won't be able to find Hanba's whereabouts. Why don't I let her subordinates go and find him? Once there's news, I'll hurry over. After making up his mind, Xiao Hua smiled and said, "I can naturally go with Ziming to that place. However, my fellow Daoist also wants to go, is that okay?" "Of course it's okay." Ziming's face was very happy and said, "Master Go Qin is an expert." In her eyes, there's not much difference between cultivators, swordsmen and soul warriors. If you go, she might be very happy. Master Go Qin? Xiao Hua stared blankly. Ziming knew she had a slip of the tongue and said with a smile, "We'll talk about this on the way. Since we have to go anyway, there's no need to hide it from the young master." Then, Ziming looked around in an exaggerated manner and asked, "But, where are the two fellow Taoists of the young master?" Sigh. At this point, Xiao Hua drooped his head like a defeated rooster and said, "I was only focused on chasing Hanba and lost them." Ziming smiled and said, "It's okay. Watch this concubine's methods." As he spoke, Ziming took out his bone staff and began to chant. Xiao Hua could tell that his voice was an extremely difficult dialect of Meng Mountain. However, as the dialect was being chanted, rays of green light appeared. These green lights were touched by the bone staff and turned into fireflies. As the fireflies disappeared into the air, wisps of black smoke emerged. In the end, the black smoke condensed into hundreds of ghost heads in midair. Although these ghost heads were small, their faces were clear. They had small noses and small eyes and looked very cute. They were completely different from the ghost heads summoned by Ho Yen and the others. Looking at Ziming giving orders in a low voice with a smile, the many ghost heads scattered and flew away, like a group of naughty children or a group of sparrows looking for food. Xiaohua couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Why are they all ghost heads? Why are Zi Ming's ghost heads so cute? Hee, young Master Xiao, in a moment, there will be news of young Master Li An. Miss Hong Xia. Zi Ming saw Xiaohua's smile and said shyly. Thank you, Zi Ming. Xiaohua couldn't help but say, I wonder if Zi Ye's ghost heads are also so cute. Hee, when you see Zi Yi, you can ask him yourself. Zi Ming covered her mouth and smiled. She looked at Xiaohua with interest. Xiaohua smiled and didn't ask any more. Chapter 28:53. In just the time it took to brew a cup of tea, a lot of ghost heads flew back one after another. They gathered in front of Zi Ming and started chattering. Xiaohua was baffled when he heard this. However, from Zi Ming's smiling face, Xiaohua knew that there was news about Fairy Hongxia and Li Zongbao. Sure enough, Zi Ming raised his head and said, Fortunately, I did not disappoint you. The two esteemed guests are about 100 miles away. Good. Zi Ming, please wait a moment. Xiaohua cupped his hands and flew in the direction Zi Ming pointed, somewhat impatiently. Master. Xiaohua had just flown up when a woman hurriedly said, This person is a Dao sect cultivator. Master is going to visit Master Qin Qin. How can you bring them along? I know that Master's matter is extremely important. This is the last chance. If Master angers the Master, everything will be for naught. I naturally know this. Zi Ming looked at Xiaohua's back and said faintly, In this world, who knows the origin? Who knows where to go? Who knew who they would meet here? Who is the one who sent us off? This world is so big, to actually meet him here. At this point, Zi Ming smiled faintly and said, Actually, this person is an extremely famous alchemist in the Dao sect. Perhaps he will be of some use to me. If you bring him along, perhaps you will have some confidence in this matter. Oh. I understand. The woman suddenly understood and nodded and retreated. Zi Ming snorted coldly and shook his head as he watched the maidservant leave. He seemed to be extremely disdainful. Subsequently, many more ghost heads returned, but Zi Ming did not ask any more questions. He gently tapped the bone staff and the ghost heads turned into black smoke and fell into the bone staff. After a while, 3 figures appeared in the distant horizon. It was Xiaohua, Li Zongbao, and Fairy Hongxia. Zi Ming raised her head, and her right eyebrow slightly raised. An indescribable feeling appeared in her bright eyes. Seeing Zi Ming behaving in such a manner, Fairy Hongxia smirked as well. A hint of enmity could be seen in her eyes, and the expression on her face spoke for itself. On the other hand, Zi Ming no longer had the same expression as before. He cupped his hands and said, Brothers, please. I am a woman, I can't be considered a brother. Without waiting for Li Zongbao to reply, Fairy Hongxia lightly said, If it's convenient for you, just call me Dao friend. Hee, that's not impossible. Zi Ming said with a smile, Since my younger brother addressed young Master Xiao as fellow Daoist that day, I will also address you as fellow Daoist. Fairy Hongxia looked at Xiaohua in annoyance. If she had not met Zi Ming here, Xiaohua might not have told her about Zi Yi. Thinking about the mysterious Jiao Xia who had just left, and then looking at Zi Ming who was also of noble birth and extraordinary appearance, Fairy Hongxia felt an indescribable sense of crisis. Haha, Xiaohua said helplessly, Senior apprentice brotherly, this is my old friend's twin sister, Zi Ming. That Zi Yi looks very similar to her. And, junior brother has already told us about Zai. He's a mutant. If I meet him, I will also make friends with him. Li Zongbao was straightforward, bowing and saying, Since he's your old friend, then he's also my old friend. Zi Ming, you don't have to be so courteous. I will still have to rely on Zi Ming and Zi Ye's strength in the millions of Meng mountains. Rest assured, young Master Li. Zi Ming lightly waved her hand, as long as it's young Master Zhao's matter, Zi Yi will definitely do his best. Even if it's Zi Ming, I will definitely not shirk from it. Seeing Ziming's indifferent attitude towards Li Zongbao, and her praise for Xiaohua, Fairy Hongxia also said, I hope, things will be as you said, that we can find Xiao Mao's whereabouts as soon as possible, rest assured, Miss Hongxia. Ziming lightly said, as long as it's within Meng Mountains, Ziming will definitely be confident. I hope. Fairy Hongxia gave a tit-for-tat reply. Ziming, Xiaohua was very sensitive to Fairy Hongxia's unfriendly tone. He lightly sighed and reminded, my two Dao friends are already here, shouldn't we leave now? If we can help Ziming before we find Xiao Mao, I will also be happy. He, young Master Xiao is too considerate. Ziming heard Xiaohua's words and was very happy. She said, if Ziming has anything to ask of young Master Xiao, I hope that young Master Xiao will not stand by and do nothing. Rest assured. Ziming is Ziye's elder sister, why would I stand by and do nothing? Xiaohua hurriedly explained when he heard Fairy Hongxia's cold snort. However, no one knew whether these words were directed at Ziming or Fairy Hongxia. Young Master Xiao, please, Ziming did not care who Xiaohua was talking to. She slightly bowed, and the spirit beast beneath her flew up and came to Xiaohua's side. Oh, Ziming, please lead the way. Seeing Ziming actually inviting him onto her spirit beast, Xiaohua was shocked. He hurriedly waved his hand and said, we will just fly by the side. How can that be? Ziming faintly glanced at Fairy Hongxia and said, esteemed guests have come from afar, how can I let you be tired? It is better for you to sit on my spirit beast. Hearing Ziming refer to herself as a concubine, Fairy Hongxia said indifferently, Ziming, we are cultivators, what is the reason for sitting on your spirit beast? We also have a flying magic item. After saying that, Fairy Hongxia looked at Li Zongbao. She had really forgotten who was the one who kept the flowing cloud flying ship. Seeing Fairy Hongxia looking at him, Li Zongbao raised his eyebrows. Although he did not say anything, the expression on his face said, how can such a precious item like the flowing cloud flying ship be with me? Indeed, Xiaohua laughed bitterly and took out the flowing cloud flying ship from the space. Under the influence of his magic power, the flying ship slowly expanded. Oh. This is the Dao Sex flying magic item? This is the first time I have seen it. Miss Hongxia, can I sit on it? Ziming ignored Xiaohua and asked Fairy Hongxia instead. This. Fairy Hongxia was at a loss for words. She could not refuse so obviously and could only hesitate. You are a spirit warrior, do you think you can sit on it? This concubine can even speak the language of cultivators, naturally I can sit on a flying magic item. Ziming said with a smile. He urged his spirit beast to fly above the flowing cloud flying ship and jumped down from the sky. His body was strong and agile. Fairy Hongxia pursed her lips. Although she did not express any dissatisfaction on the surface, it was obvious that her gaze was full of a disdain for this uncivilized woman who did not know etiquette. Seeing Fairy Hongxia roll her eyes after pursing her lips, Xiaohua was very tactful. After boarding the flowing cloud flying ship, he immediately hid in a corner, neither controlling the flying ship nor speaking. If it was the Shui of the past, she might have jumped on the flying ship, called out, husband, and sat beside Xiaohua sweetly. But Fairy Hongxia knew that she could not do that. She just stood by the side of the flying ship and looked at the desolate surroundings, thinking about something. Li Zongbao was helpless. This flying ship could only be driven by him. Miss Ziming, please lead the way. Li Zongbao looked at Ziming, who had a strange expression on her face, and said lightly. It's in that direction. Ziming nodded and pointed in a direction. Then, she gave a few instructions to the maids on the left. After the maids agreed, she said to Li Zongbao, this concubine will follow Mr. Li, these maids will follow soon. Li Zongbao responded indifferently. Then, he urged the flowing cloud flying ship to go in the direction Ziming pointed. The maids rode their spirit beasts and flew behind the flying ship. In a moment, they disappeared without a trace. The atmosphere on the flying ship was a little strange. Xiaohua sat cross-legged in a corner of the flying ship, holding a jade pendant in his hand. He seemed to be comprehending a cultivation technique. Fairy Hongxia had been staring forward since she boarded the flying ship. Ziming stood in the middle of the flying ship, and did not seem unfamiliar. Only Li Zongbao was a little busy. He sat cross-legged and focused on driving the flying ship. After the time it took to eat a meal, Ziming's mouth curled up slightly. She asked with concern, "Mr. Xiao, when you met Hitorigami earlier, did it hurt your spiritual sense?" Xiao Hua heard and opened his eyes slightly. He nodded and said, "That's right. That Hitorigami's divine ability is indeed powerful. I was not careful and fell for it. If that's the case, then it's still very fortunate." Ziming smiled and said, "But if Mr. Spiritual Sense is burned by Hitorigami for a long time, I'm afraid it will be permanently damaged." At this point, Ziming's face changed slightly. She said anxiously, "Mr. Xiao, could it be that you, darling Xiao?" Although Fairy Hongxia had been facing outside the flying ship, her ears were already perked up. When she heard Ziming's question, she sneered in her heart. She also knew about Hitorigami's divine ability. Her spiritual sense was also injured by Hitorigami, but it was fine now. However, when she heard Ziming's question and saw Xiao Hua's situation, she immediately understood. She panicked and turned around. Could it be that your spiritual sense was injured by Hitorigami?" Sigh, Xiao Hua smiled bitterly and sighed. "After I separated from you all, I met Hitorigami. Without my spiritual sense, where do you want me to go to find you all?" Darling Xiao, Fairy Hongxia's eyes were filled with tears. She instantly thought of the time when they were in danger. Xiao Hua's spiritual sense was so weak. How could she not know that Xiao Hua was risking his spiritual sense being permanently damaged to find her? Fairy Hongxia did not want to be angry anymore. She floated to Xiao Hua's side and asked anxiously, "How is your spiritual sense now? How else can it be?" Xiao Hua released his spiritual sense and scanned everyone. Fairy Hongxia sensed for a moment and could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. At this moment, Xiao Hua's spiritual sense was very weak. It was not as vast as before. His spiritual sense even felt like it was riddled with holes. It was seriously injured. Darling Xiao, Fairy Hongxia was so distressed that she did not know what to say. Chapter 28:54. It's all my fault. Fairy Hongxia lowered her head and said, "If I didn't ask you to come to Meng Mountain, you wouldn't have suffered such a serious injury." That's right, divine sense is the weapon of a cultivator's Naiwan palace. It's the most delicate. Ordinary injuries are difficult to heal, let alone such a serious injury. Ziming had made it clear that Hitorigami's injury would be permanent. Without some secret technique, it would be impossible to heal. Fairy Hongxia's expression changed. Ziming was also shocked. She frowned as if she was thinking about something. But the more she thought, the tighter her frown became. It seemed like she couldn't come up with a good idea. "It's nothing." Xiao Hua wanted to comfort her, but when he saw the concerned look on Fairy Hongxia's face, he retracted his hand slightly and kept the jade pendant in his hand into his space. He then said, "It's just a spiritual injury. Let it rest for now. Perhaps there will be a chance to heal it in the future." Sigh, Master Xiao is indeed magnanimous. Ziming's eyes flashed with concern. She sighed and said, "I'm a spirit warrior. Although I've dabbled in the spells of the Dao sect, I'm not familiar with divine sense. But I know that, to heal divine sense, it's extremely difficult." Speaking of this, Ziming's eyes lit up again, and he said happily, "By the way, Master Kachin is experienced and knowledgeable. Maybe she has some secret skills. Young Master Li, let's hurry over, the sooner the better. Senior, let me help you." Fairy Hongxia heard and quickly ran to Li Zongbao's side. She sat cross-legged and channeled her magic to help Li Zongbao control the airship. "Sister, don't be anxious." Ziming whispered, we have time. When we get to the master, I'll definitely ask her for help. Thank you, sister. Fairy Hongxia's face reddened. She was embarrassed by her previous actions. She said, I'll leave Xiaohua's matter to you. However, you have to take priority. Even if Master Kuqin doesn't agree, when we return to Xi, we'll still be able to find the secret technique. Both matters are very important. Ziming smiled, and Master Zhao's matter has to be put before mine. Oh. Fairy Hongxia was stunned. She didn't understand and asked curiously, why? Forgive me for not being able to speak of this matter. Ziming shook her head slightly, then turned around to look at Xiaohua and said, however, since young Master Xiao is my younger brother's best friend, I will definitely work hard. Alright, Fairy Hongxia nodded her head and looked at Xiaohua, her eyes filled with worry. Xiaohua, who was sitting cross-legged, was overjoyed. His spiritual will was indeed severely injured, and the injuries were just as Fairy Hongxia and the rest had seen. However, in addition to his spiritual force, he also had Buddhist awareness. Even if he couldn't use his spiritual force, couldn't control magic treasures, and couldn't speak, would he still have Buddhist awareness? Was there still any innate primordial water? Do you still have the wishful wand? What about Dream Slayer and Mountain Splitter? Actually, the injury to his spiritual force didn't have much of an effect on his sacred art. As for the healing that Fairy Hongxia and Ziming were worried about, if it was before Xiaohua met Jiuxia, he would have to worry about it. However, with Jiuxia's sun-shrouding art, all these difficulties weren't difficult at all. That was the sun-shrouding art that was comparable to the ancient divine fire art. It specialized in cultivating the primordial spirit and strengthening one's spiritual force. Repairing the spiritual force was just a minor detail. What Xiaohua had comprehended earlier was the content of the sun-shrouding art. Previously, Xiaohua wanted to explain to Fairy Hongxia and Ziming. However, Fairy Hongxia actually took the initiative to talk to Ziming out of concern for him. Although it was his first time meeting Ziming, and there wasn't anything that Fairy Hongxia was thinking about, wasn't it better to coax Fairy Hongxia to divert her attention? Besides, this sun-shrouding art was given by Jiuxia. Would Xiaohua dare to explain it to Fairy Hongxia? When I see that Grandmaster, no matter what kind of secret technique he has, I'll just tell my wife that I got it. Xiaohua thought to himself and began to comprehend the sun-shrouding art word by word. Seeing Xiaohua close his eyes and meditate, Fairy Hongxia gradually calmed down. She knew that this husband of hers had always been mysterious. She had also practiced the god's guidance before. Even though it didn't have the effect of repairing one's spiritual will, but since Xiaohua had the god's guidance, he might have other secret techniques as well. After feeling relieved, Fairy Hongxia sighed with emotion that Xiaohua wasn't afraid of the pain of his spiritual force being burned for her. Her heart was filled with sweetness again. In such a good mood, Ziming was no longer an eyesore. Therefore, not long after, Fairy Hongxia and Ziming chatted casually and slowly became familiar with each other. Grandmaster Kuqin's residence seemed to be very far away. The flowing cloud airship flew straight for half a day, but Ziming didn't say anything to change direction. Seeing the sun gradually setting in the west and some birds and beasts starting to return to their nests, Ziming stood up and sighed. Back then, Maimeng Mountain was prosperous. Under the setting sun, it was also abnormally lively. How could it be desolate now? With such a decline, it's not strange that the drought demon appeared. That. Fairy Hongxia opened her mouth and wanted to tell Ziming about the corn. But after thinking about it, this was a matter between Xiao Mao and Xiaohua. Since Xiaohua didn't tell Ziming, she didn't dare to say more. She stopped halfway. Oh right, Miss Ziming. At this moment, Li Zongbao, who had been silent all this time, spoke. Are you a citizen of Huda's stronghold? Ziming glanced at Li Zongbao. Her attitude was obviously not as warm as when she was with Xiaohua. She replied indifferently, young Master Li seems to know the situation of Maimeng Mountain very well. I just found out about it. Li Zongbao didn't think much of it and replied, the Meng Mountain region near Huan country isn't big. There are only the descendants of the great god Shibai and the great god Hutu. Since Xiao Mao is a citizen of Shibai, Zi Ming's accent is different from Xiao Mao's, and the extravagance is so grand. Naturally you are a descendant of the great god Hutu. Yes, that's true. Zi Ming nodded. Meng Mountain is dominated by the descendants of the two great gods. The descendants of the other great gods are all in Meng Mountain. Or perhaps, there are also some of our citizens in there. I would like to ask. Li Zongbao slightly worded his words and asked again, the 12 great gods of Meng Mountain, who are they? Young Master Li seems to be very concerned about the matters of Meng Mountain. Zi Ming was a little unwilling to answer. However, as a junior, if there isn't an urgent matter, I won't casually mention the name of Meng Mountain's god slayer. Otherwise, I will be punished by the sacred beast. Sacred beast? Li Zongbao raised his eyebrows slightly. He hadn't asked for the names of the 12 great gods, and now a sacred beast had appeared. If young Master Li is interested in these matters, you can ask Xiao Mao. Zi Ming seemed to refuse to answer. Actually. Li Zongbao bit his lips and said in a low voice, I've heard that there is a mysterious technique in Million Meng Mountain that can revive the dead. And I've seen. Young lady Zi Ming holding a bone staff. You should be able to control ghosts, so. I would like to know if the descendants of the great god Hutu have such a technique? Yes, this was the main purpose of Li Zongbao's visit to Million Meng Mountain. Even if Zi Ming didn't want to answer, he still had to ask. Zi Ming was slightly stunned. She had never used the ghost taming technique in front of Li Zongbao and Fairy Hongxia. However, she only needed to ponder for a moment to understand that this was just Li Zongbao's guess. That's right, Zi Ming admitted frankly, the descendants of the 12 great gods of Meng Mountain all have their own secret divine abilities. I'm the descendant of the Huda stockade, so I naturally know the ghost taming technique. However, as far as I know, the technique that can revive the dead that young Master Li mentioned, I'm afraid it doesn't exist. At this point, Zi Ming raised her head slightly and looked at the Million Meng Mountain that was gradually shrouded in darkness. She said faintly, death is like this darkness. Sooner or later, it will cover the earth. Even if there is light after the darkness, but, how can it be so easy to revive the dead? Oh. Li Zongbao felt a chill in his heart. However, when he heard Zi Ming's last sentence, he became anxious again. Could it be, there is such a god in noble shaman stockade? I'm willing to beg this great god with everything I have. Other than the 12 great gods, who in Meng Mountain dares to call themselves great gods? Zi Ming sneered. Besides, it's a great divine ability to revive the dead. If it was an ancient great god, of course, he could do it. But how could the people of today have such a divine ability? If young Master Li visits Meng Mountain and there is such a god, I'll do what young Master Li did and beg this god with everything I have. This. Li Zongbao was speechless. Sister. Fairy Hongxia knew what Li Zongbao was thinking. Seeing him embarrassed, she quickly said, it's very difficult to revive the dead. However, we heard about the miraculous Million Meng Mountain in the country of Shi. That's why we came to look for it. Could it be that sister really doesn't have a way? Zi Ming wasn't too cold to Fairy Hongxia. After giving her a glance, Zi Ming shook her head slightly. Humans are the spirits of heaven and earth. Their 3 souls and 6 spirits are all profound. We have inherited the witchcraft of our ancestors. Although we can temper our souls and use the power of souls to cast spells, it only touches the surface of the soul. How can we revive the dead? Zi Ming's bright eyes moved as she looked at Xiao Hua. There was a hint of a smile in her voice as she said, in this world, there is someone as infatuated as young Master Li, who wants to find a secret technique in Meng Mountain. If I'm not wrong, she must be young Master Li's sweetheart, right? That's right. That's right. Li Zongbao admitted without hesitation, I'm willing to exchange my life for her. Sigh. Fairy Hongxia sighed. She was a little disappointed. Ming. Xiao Hua, who was far away, was happy. He had comprehended the secret technique and had a foundation. He opened his eyes and said with a smile, "From your tone, it seems that many swordsmen have come to Meng Mountain to look for this secret technique?" Hee, it's not just the swordsmen from Sword Domain. Many cultivators from the 3 kingdoms of cultivation have come as well. Ming replied with a smile. Moreover, Zai was invited to Sky Patrol City to help a cultivator called Tu Hong. Chapter 28:55. Tu Hong. When Xiao Hua heard this, he was shocked and asked curiously, "Ziyi went to Golden Spring Mountain to help Tu Hong revive Yuji?" "Oh. Young Master Xiao knows about this?" Ming was surprised. "I don't think. Ziyi told you about this?" Hee, Xiao Hua laughed. "Everything in this world has a cause and effect. The intertwining of cause and effect is like a tangled knot. Therefore, there has never been a secret in this world that has been hidden for 10,000 years. Although Ziyi didn't tell me about Golden Spring Mountain, I have experienced life and death in Golden Spring Mountain, and I know some of Tu Hong's secrets, so I naturally know that Ziyi went to help Yuji." "I see." Ming laughed. Tu Hong is a cultivator in Sky Patrol City. His dual cultivation partner, Yuji, died because of him, so he vowed to revive Yuji. Your Dao sex methods are truly miraculous. I don't know what method he used, but he was actually able to preserve Yuji's soul from dissipating. Furthermore, he even used the ice frost mirror to preserve Yuji's corpse. This way, Ziyi would be able to use some of his methods. But, that Yuji didn't seem to be revived? Xiao Hua had seen Yuji before, and asked curiously, "What methods can Ziyi use? How can he revive Yuji?" Ming pursed his lips and laughed. That day, Ziyi told the person clearly that he could only let Yuji speak and move, but he never said that he could revive Yuji. Hee, in fact, even so, it consumed a lot of Ziyi's soul power. If Tu Hong didn't have a soul treasure from Meng Mountain and paid a certain price, Ziyi wouldn't have made a trip to Sky Patrol City. At this point, Ming laughed again. "Of course, if not for the trip to Sky Patrol City, I'm afraid Ziyi wouldn't have met young Master Xiao." A soul and a spirit. Li Zongbao was a little dazed, as if he didn't even have a soul and a spirit left. Ming, if someone has died for dozens of years, can they be like Yuji? Xiao Hua hesitated and asked. He knew that if he didn't confirm this matter, Li Zongbao would never be able to let it go. Decades. Ming was shocked. Not to mention that the 3 souls and 6 spirits have completely dissipated. Furthermore, if it weren't for the ice abyss mirror, I'm afraid that even the corpse would have turned into white bones. How could it possibly be refined into? At this point, Ming did not explain, and vaguely said, "Actually, even if you take on the appearance of Yuji, does young Master Xiao think that it's the same as a living person? Rather than that, why should we disturb the peace of the people in the underworld?" Xiao Hua was silent. He looked at Li Zongbao and said in a low voice, "Ming, I've always been confused about something. In this world, is there such a thing as the 9 springs? There's an underworld? What about the netherworld?" Of course there is. Ming chuckled and said, "The ancestor of my Huda village, the great god Hutu, was the god of the netherworld. She transformed her body into a world and became a netherworld master. Otherwise, how could the people of my Huda village have the ability to control ghosts?" "Oh, there really is a netherworld?" Xiao Hua's mental energy array was activated. Then where is it? Where? How would I know?" Ming shrugged her shoulders. Her expression was actually very similar to Ziyi's. "Other than the great god Hutu, or the 12 great gods, I'm afraid no one knows." Then, where did Ming summon all the ghost heads from? Xiao Hua broke the pot and asked. "I only need to wave my bone staff and chant an incantation. Those ghost heads will naturally come." Ming innocently blinked her eyes and said, "As for where they came from, do I need to know?" That's true." Xiao Hua scratched his head. Miss Ziming, I still have a question. Please enlighten me. Li Zongbao's mind calmed down and asked again, the person who died for decades, can you see her? Her situation in the netherworld? This. Ziming hesitated for a moment and said, actually, the so-called netherworld is just a title. I really don't know the specific situation. Hearing that Ziming did not directly refuse, Xiaohua knew that Ziming probably had some tricks up her sleeve. He looked at Li Zongbao and sighed, alas, this matter is related to me. Oh, is it related to young Master Xiao? Ziming was startled and showed interest. Xiaohua roughly described Kai Zhuoxia's expression and sighed, that day, my cultivation was too shallow. I watched fellow Kai fall in the fire lake, but I couldn't do anything. So young Master Li is also such an infatuated person. Ziming's attitude towards Li Zongbao changed a little. She thought for a moment and said, I will naturally help young Master achieve this wish. However, this matter is not too difficult, but there are also a few difficulties. Miss, please speak. Li Zongbao was overjoyed and said anxiously, I will listen to your instructions. My Huda stronghold has a soul treasure called Tongming. It can realize the face of the person who died in young Master's heart, or the situation of the so-called netherworld. Ziming explained, but this item can only be used once every 10 years, and can be used by 3 people at a time. According to what I know, the last time it was used was around 10 years. But if it cannot be used, young Master will have to wait. Well said. Li Zongbao hurriedly nodded. In addition, this item is sometimes very sensitive, but sometimes it is not effective. Young Master Li should not place too much hope on it. Ziming said again. I know. If I can see Zhuoxia alive, even if there is a chance, I will not give up. Li Zongbao hurriedly said. All right, since that is the case, I will go and see Master Kachin. Young Master Li can follow me back to Huda stronghold. Tongming is my clan's sole treasure, and it is enshrined in the ancestral hall. Ziming smiled, young Master Xiao can also go and see Zai. Good, Xiaohua clapped and said, I have long wanted to see Zai again. As you wish. Ziming smiled like a flower. Sister, when senior brother Li uses it, can I watch from the side? Fairy Hongxia hurriedly asked. Of course not. Ziming shook her head, but after young Master Li uses it, I can use it too. Will I disturb Zhuoxia? Fairy Hongxia was a little worried. Oh. Sister also wants to see Kai Zhuoxia? Ziming was stunned again, but then she understood, sister's surname is also Kai? That's right, my name is Kai Hongxia. Kai Zhuoxia is my sister. Fairy Hongxia nodded. Ziming was a little speechless. She thought for a moment and smiled bitterly, this. Sister does not know. You can try. Then forget it, Fairy Hongxia shook her head, don't do anything bad to sister. Up to you. Ziming nodded slightly. She had indeed never encountered such a situation. However, when she looked at Xiaohua again, Xiaohua had already closed his eyes and was preparing to meditate. Young Master Xiao, could it be that you don't have any relatives that you want to remember? Ziming was a little surprised. Because anyone who knew the effects of Huda's stronghold's Tongming would be pleasantly surprised or curious. They had never been as calm as Xiaohua. This. Xiaohua thought for a moment and shook his head, I really don't. That's strange. Ziming was a little curious. But Xiaohua smiled and closed his eyes again. Ziming tactfully didn't ask any more questions. She didn't have Xiaohua's drive to get to the bottom of things. The place where Master Qin lived was really far away. The flowing cloud airship flew for more than 10 days before they arrived at a place filled with dead trees. Along the way, Xiaohua asked Ziming a lot. After all, he was still worried about Xiao Mao. But Ziming shook her head. There was no news on the way, so she didn't know whether or not they found Hanba. Of course, Ziming's 2 reasons for comforting Xiaohua made Xiaohua feel a little relieved. The first reason was that if the Huda stronghold spirit warriors couldn't find Hanba, then it was even more impossible for Xiao Hua to find Hanba. And Xiao Hua had seen Ho Yen of Huda's stronghold lead the spirit warriors to find Hanba, so he naturally believed Ziming. The second reason was that Ziming mentioned before. Hanba was an ancient iron corpse and had some relationship with the ancient god Shibai. And Xiao Mao was the descendant of the ancient god Shibai, so his bloodline was abnormally pure. Hanba might not have any bad intentions. Or maybe, Hanba wouldn't dare to have any bad intentions. And Xiao Hua had thought about this before. He guessed that Hanba must have her reasons for kidnapping Xiao Mao. Therefore, Xiao Mao's life might not be in danger. But the problem was that even if Xiao Mao's life wasn't in danger, other dangers were worrying. If Hanba really kidnapped him and made him the wife of the stronghold, then it would be really unfortunate. But now, they were in the millions of Meng Mountains. Even if Xiao Hua knew that Ziming was comforting him, he could only listen. There was a limit to human strength. He didn't have the ability to find Xiao Mao and Hanba at any time. At this time, Xiao Hua missed Jiu Xia very much. It wasn't that he missed Jiu Xia's beauty, but Jiu Xia's seemingly omniscient ability. Maybe, after comprehending the complete sunshade art, I should also take a look at Jiu Xia's divination skills. Xiao Hua looked at the withered yellow below the flying boat and couldn't help but think. There are so many withered trees here. It must have been a place with lush vegetation in the past. Fairy Hongxia said from the side. Ziming heard and sighed, yes, there used to be mountains and rivers, flowers and grass here. There were also some beautiful soul beasts and feathered birds resting here. It was really a beautiful scene. I came here with Zai a few years ago and really liked this place. But now, the weather of Meng Mountains has changed greatly. Not only are the plants withered, even people find it difficult to survive. This. Xiao Hua hesitated slightly and said, this might have a solution. What did young Master Xiao say? Ziming didn't seem to understand Xiao Hua's meaning. At this time, Xiao Hua had already thought it through. He nodded and said, what I mean is that the weather of the millions of Meng Mountains has changed greatly. The plants have withered. This is a natural phenomenon. But human survival might not be without a solution. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.